All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a special open meeting of the Third Laguna Hills Mutual Board of Directors, a California nonprofit mutual benefit corporation. Today is Monday, August 19th, 2024. It is now 1:30 p.m. We are live in the boardroom as well as available for viewing on TV6, Granicus, and Zoom. I'd like to start by calling the meeting to order. I see that we have a quorum present. Thank you, Board. The purpose of today's meeting is to review the proposed 2025 Third Mutual Business Plan, also known as the budget, and have the Board and staff and potentially members suggest any changes they think should be considered. I'd like to acknowledge any media that might be in attendance or listening in. And moving on to agenda item 4, can I get a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting? SK moves, David seconds, thank you. Any suggested changes to today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will consider the agenda approved by consent. I have no chair remarks today. I'll save my comments and questions for the discussion of the business plan information. We're now moving on to agenda item 6, which is for open forum. At this time, members may address the Board of Directors regarding items within the jurisdiction of this Board of Directors and not on the agenda. The Board reserves the right to limit the total amount of time allotted to the open forum to 30 minutes. Each member is asked to speak for no more than 3 minutes. A member may speak only once during this forum, and speakers may not give their time to other people. And members who are not in the boardroom at this time can also share their comments by joining this meeting via Zoom or by emailing your comments to meeting@vmsinc.org to have your message read during this open forum should time permit. So, Karina, do we have any open forum speakers today?
And not at this moment.
Okay. That's a lot of words for not much. Okay. Then no responses. So we're then now at agenda item 8, which is to review in some level of detail the proposed 2025 Third Mutual Business Plan. And at this point, I will turn the meeting over to Steve and his team.
Fantastic. Thank you, President Laws, members of the board, and the audience. Thank you very much for your attendance and listening to our version 3 budget. So we'll go ahead and give sling over to slide number 2 of our presentation. We're going to go ahead and give as always, a quick history on our plan itself. So I won't go through all the details. I'll kind of give you slide number 2, please. There we go. Just an indication of where we stand today. You'll see over on the far right-hand side, this is for the third board, of course, and we are at the bottom right. We are under the televised business plan review here on August 19th. So after today, we will take any input that we receive from the board and consolidate it into a final draft that will get presented to the board on Tuesday, September 17th at 9:30 for a business plan adoption. So moving on, some of you have heard these examples before, but on slide number 3, some of the things that are impacting your 2025 budget is something that is affecting everyone, is starting off with inflation. Inflation has been going up and down over the past few years, as high as 8 to 10%. That is driving up a lot of your costs, and you'll see from materials and supplies, inflation, labor and various other items are causing some increases. Likewise, utilities. Utilities continue to increase. When we start going through some of the details, Jose will be presenting the impacts that you're seeing with regards to electricity and water. Some of the other external forces that we have are workers' compensation insurance. I'm happy to say that our claims have not increased. However, like most insurances throughout the community, whether it's car, property, or here, workers' compensation, the insurance aspect itself is increasing. So you'll see that when we hit the compensation numbers. And lastly, union and non-union wage adjustments are also increasing as well and having an impact. So many of you are aware of the fact that minimum wage increased to $16, and then you're also seeing some of the food industry has raised their minimum wage to $20 an hour. Some of those entry-level positions are also some of the positions that we employ here, so we're competing with those labor markets. Now, on to some more of the details with your budget. Slide number 4, thank you. Overall, you can see on that top line in 2024, your total basic assessment was $587.60. Again, that is what you're paying on a monthly basis right now. The version 3 that we're presenting before you today is $616.98. It's an increase of $29.38, or a 5% increase. And then the listing that we have below, there's 6 items, and of those 6 items, they represent 87% of the total increase, that $29.38. I'll give you a quick overview going down this list. The removal of the damage restoration backlog revenue, as most of you are aware, in 2024, we added $2.2 million of revenue into your business plan. Again, that was for 2024. Now that work is going to be completed during the current year, you're not going to have a reoccurrence of those revenues. And absent that $2.2 million, that's going to naturally just increase the year 2025 assessments by $30.73. When we went over the 2024 budget, we let everyone know that it was going to be a one-time occurrence. And at that time, the board made a decision while it was a decrease in assessments, you offset that by an increase in the unappropriated expenditure fund, just to make certain that your assessment was leveling out at 5% per year. And then you're going to see that elimination of that exact same dollar amount at the bottom of this list, the elimination of the unappropriated expenditure fund. So offset, it's going up by about $5. You're also increasing your reserve fund contributions by $13.86, and that is consistent with the reserve, the 30-year plan that we had presented in the previous year. Moving on down the list, the third item on the list is the addition of 2 cycles of shrub bed maintenance. That is $700,000 in 2025, the equivalent of $9.56. Utilities, as I mentioned before, some of the external forces that we're being faced with is rising utilities. In 2025, we are planning for a $604,000 increase, equates to $8.24 per meter per month. And then the last one is a reduction to the disaster fund contribution. So whereas in the previous years you had a significant contribution to the disaster fund, so we are lowering that down by $11.31. And the point of that is to make certain that your assessments year to year remain at a 5% increase. And again, I already mentioned the elimination of the unappropriated expenditure fund. So a total of those 6 items are $25.61. Once again, 87% of the $29.38 increase that you're being proposed with an increase for this year. And at this point, I will go ahead and turn it over to CEO Foster to my right.
Thank you, Steve. Honorable members of the board, just to give you a quick overview of our process and what got us here today. Our budget development process is an iterative process. Between February and April, department directors and executive management reviewed budgeted staffing levels for 2018 to 2024, determining vacant positions that could be eliminated and reasonable 2025 staffing levels based on efficiencies and process adjustments and the inherent turnover in the current job market. Next slide, please. From that point on, in April, department directors input their line item budgets. In May, executive management reviewed those budgets, make recommended changes, and then conduct departmental budget reviews with the department heads. And that leads us to the June version 1 budget as a starting point. And then in July, we go through and develop version 2 of the budget, and this reduced the proposed operating budget by more than $500,000 and the non-operating budget by more than $300,000. And similarly in August, between version 2 and version 3, we again reduced the operating budget by more than $169,000 and the non-operating budget by about $740,000. And Jose will go through all the details now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So today I wanted to talk to you. I'll be giving you a lot of details as far as how we got to where we are in the budget, also providing some explanations as far as budget over budget comparisons. But before we do so, just kind of wanted to bring it back and let you know where we are, what has changed from the last time that we talked. Again, this is version 3. So from version 2 to version 3, we did take a closer look at the budget and found out a couple of things, or included a couple of changes. One of them is going to be as far as taxes are concerned. We've been talking to you over and over again that your investments are making some money, and that portion of your money making ventures is going to be taxable. That, however, we took a closer look, and the investments really are out of your reserves. So therefore, it's only appropriate that the taxes that we're earning on those investments also be paid from the reserves. So from version 2 to version 3, we did move $150,000 from operating, putting it into reserves to account for that. Additionally, we took a closer look at additional occupant fee revenue, and we read the numbers and saw that you can comfortably budget a little bit of extra revenue there, so we included $10,000 of revenue there. There were a couple of other small changes, reductions in expenses that we took a look at, totaling about $8,500 that you see on your screen as well. So altogether, that was a $169,000 reduction. We suggested that you take that money and put it into as a contribution into the disaster fund. Again, disaster fund, which we'll get to in a little bit. We'll show you some balances, but just want to let you know that our recommendation is to put that into the disaster fund and maintain that 5% total increase that we're talking about. So those were the changes on operating. And again, we'll go through all of these in a little bit more detail. I just wanted to give you the general overview of the changes. As far as version 2 to version 3 changes, one of the things that we included in here is that turf removal at gates 11 and 14. This is that AB 1572 issue that we keep talking about. This is something that needs to be done in about 4 years' time. However, we thought that at your direction, we have postponed commencing that until 2026. So 2025 we'll have the design portion, but we had planned originally for $1.5 million of construction, and that has come out of this version of the budget. Additionally, we have some updated pricing in the seal coat program that we'll be talking about a little bit more at length. This is an item that was covered in your closed session of your M&C. A new contract was brought forth. We had made an assumption that it was going to be a certain price. It wasn't as high as we thought, so we were able to reduce the budget by $35,000. Again, just taking a look, a couple of minor changes here and there. There were other reductions of about $5,000. However, there were a couple of additions. Number 4 is the reclassification of income taxes. I just talked about how that came out of operating and it did get put into reserves. And also, there's additional funding, again, at your request, that we put in for pipe replacements to the tune of $500,000, just to make sure that we were going to be able to address any needs inside of your pipes and infrastructure and those kinds of things. So all in all, from version 2 to version 3, this is a decrease of $740,000. So that is a general synopsis of the changes from version 2 to version 3. For the next couple of slides, I will be talking a little bit about some general overview. Then we'll go into each of the individual portions of the budget, and we'll pause at the end of each of those sections for any questions, if that's okay, Mr. President. So we'll start here with just giving you some total staffing trends as it comes to the entire community here. So you see that over the last few years, we've had some decreases, the biggest of which recently in 2023, we started accounting for a vacancy factor. And this is something that instead of charging you for all the positions that we hope to hire for, we include a vacancy factor acknowledging that not all positions will be filled at all times. So that is why you saw the decrease in 24. In 25, you see a further decrease really having to do in GRF. They outsourced their golf maintenance, or at least plan to outsource their golf maintenance, and that drove down the staff count. But you can see that staffing is trending upward. Not necessarily that the dollars are going to match. A lot of that was outsourced. However, this is a common question that we get asked, which is why we include this on the slide, is how much staff do we have and where are we trending? That's what you see there on your screen. But as far as an assessment history is concerned, there are 2 portions to your assessment. There's a third specific portion and a GRF portion. Here on your screen, you see the third basic assessment over the last 5 years. You also see the percent increases that have gone over time. You see that historically it's been about 5% with the exception of 2022, which that was going to be your big change in year when it comes to insurance. Insurance really ramped up there. It really started growing exponentially, not only for you, but really as as a country, and the industry in general, it really spiked at that point. But anyway, you can see here that over the last couple of years, or 2024, you had a 5% increase. The proposed increase for 2025 is also 5%, going from $587.60 to $616.98. But as we were talking, it's not only the third portion, but members of third are also members of GRF. And here you see those same dollar amounts, but this time with the GRF portion included on there. So combined, we're looking at a 4.8% increase there, going from $815.82 to $855.17. I'll pause here for any questions, generally speaking, before we get into the details of the business plan.
Go ahead.
Okay, a quick question on, let's see, slide number 8. Yeah, item 4, reclassification of income taxes out of operating fund. Where did the taxes get reclassified to?
Reserve.
Okay,
Into the reserve fund.
okay,
Reserve and restricted. You do have a little bit of money that's invested for you in your disaster fund.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay. Nope, go ahead, President.
Could you please show us slide 9? Since 2021, our staff reduction is about almost 50 FTEs, which translate to around, close to $3 million. What % of that we substitute with a subcontract, and what % of it is total performance gain? Do we know that?
yes, for outsourcing golf maintenance, the total reduction of staff was 16.
Yeah, I'm looking at the span of 2021 to today for 2025, which we lost about 50, or we eliminated 50 position. Out of that 50 position, they're saving in the labor cost. What % of that was subcontracted out, and what % of it was efficiency gain? Do we know that? 50%, 10% efficiency,
So
or
unfortunately-
all of it with subcontract, or even more?
Right. So unfortunately, we don't have that statistic available. We can see if we can pull it together here the next hour while we're discussing. Our team can work on that. But it's a combination. So for 21 and 22, we were often favorable to budget because of the fact that we were outsourcing, we were able to get things done. Whereas in 2023, it's not that we lost the positions necessarily. So again, if we anticipate having a full-time employee, one position, but we anticipate we're not going to be able to fill it for 12 months, that there's going to be a gap for about 1 or 2 months, we began budgeting for that in 2024. That's why you're seeing the FTEs decrease significantly, because we're taking a more active role in planning for that. So we are still, when it comes to budgeting, we still budget for this work to be done by full-time employees. There are going to be instances where we don't fill the position and we have it outsourced, right?
Yeah, that I think that's a crux of my question. What % of that is subcontracted that we don't have to go back and backfill anything and we paying out? Because with that, in the future, someone want to look at the subcontracting was better than having our staff, or what if we can deduct a lot of information and say we're better off to hire someone than going out there because it doesn't make sense. Or yeah, it made sense. We gain some efficiency by subcontracting some of those things, because that's how, one can make some, decision or assumption.
It's certainly not a 1-to-1 ratio, so we contract out less than we budget generally. And the biggest chunk would be landscaping services, where we contract for about 20 positions.
Go ahead, SK.
Yeah, I do not understand clearly about this phenomenon going on here. From 2024 to 2025, V3, we have about 18 people eliminated, right? Am I correct? Now, we have increased expenditure for outsourced contract out our work. And then yet, according to your presentation at first, the budget increase, increase is due to the compensation increase. That part and relate to this, I do not understand.
So your question again is,
Okay,
sorry.
18 people, let's say $80,000 per one person. So that's quite a big chunk of money we save. Yet,
And let me pause there, if I may. As far as the contracting is concerned, the majority of what we're talking about is golf maintenance. Golf maintenance is going to be outsourced. That means the work is still going to get done. It's just going to be done by outsourcing it. You're not going to be saving 16 times $80,000. In fact, GRF, and again, this is all golf maintenance, right? It's GRF. GRF will be saving about $250,000 by outsourcing. So that is the savings or the reason that we're doing that type of outsourcing. However, that's not going to save you the kinds of numbers that you're talking about.
no, I'm not, is that related to that number of people? I'm talking about strictly 2024 to 2025, the reduction of 18 people. Is that 18 people is related to golfing operation contract? Is that what it is?
16 of them are, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so just-
I still don't
Yeah, I was
quite
just
clear
going to say, this
understand.
question seems to come up often, so maybe perhaps going forward, this staffing trend could be just for Third Mutual, because there's a lot of GRF stuff being thrown in here, golf maintenance, that might be a better solution, so we can see how our employees rank. I think it looks like, what, 30% or 3%, we've reduced the number of employees 3%, yet you're saying costs of employment still goes up.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
If employees get a 5% raise as an average, then I would expect the cost to go up 2%. If you reducing 3% and you're adding 5%, so I'm expecting that it would go up a little bit.
Yeah. To be honest, I didn't have time to study on this one. I worked on something else because of that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But one way or the other, whether it's a GRF or our budget, it's out of our pocket, regardless. So that's why I'm trying to keep asking the question of reduction of the staff. Why that does not reflect to our compensation? That's my question.
May I say
Okay.
something on that?
Yeah, and then Moon had his hand up.
You speak first.
Yeah, go ahead, Rez.
Yeah, and because this is the question I asked in the past also. When the GRF decided to stop contract the golf, they showed 80,000 saving. And they transferred the staff, and we got 2 cycle addition in third. My question is, did we get the good end of the bargain or we lost money? I don't know. I cannot substantiate that. They saved money. They show they saved money. I don't know if we can, third can show with that, with the 2 cycle, we saved money or we could have subcontract and get better deal. I don't know that. But it's worth a question.
that is a good
We
question.
inherited some 20 people.
Third was unaffected by GRF's decision.
Well, we got the 23 people came in to do the 2 cycles. We paying for it.
That's a
But
different-
I don't agree with that at all.
That was a different decision that the board made.
I understand, but that's related together. These questions relate together that if they show saving, we got more staff to do 2 cycle, did we get the better end of the bargain or not? Our decision impacts our finances. The third, because now we have people that are there doing the 2 additional cycle. I'm not, saying they're not, but I don't know it was a good deal for the third or not?
Sure, and
That's
I-
the question I'm asking.
And I want to clarify for that again, GRF's decision to outsource maintenance, golf maintenance did not affect third. As far as the board decided to put in an additional 2 cycles, that is all outsourced. So you gave us a specific dollar amount, or Kurt let you know how much it was going to cost to do those additional 2 cycles, which was
700,000.
700,000, thank you. So that is the option that the board chose to go with, but again, those 2 just are not related.
Yeah. But in general, employees cost less than outsourced resources, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, in general, I mean.
I try to agree with you.
Moon, you had a question or comment?
Okay, slide 4. We are giving up about 2.2 million not to collect to damage control. In essence, we are returning that money to the resident. In essence, okay, we may not be able to collect all of them, but we give up to collect so resident benefit. Okay, whoever owes to us. Okay, in essence, I want to bring that point to the resident. Second one is second page. I'm a little bit ahead because it's the human resource expense we're talking about. We cannot control many other things. Inflation we cannot control, and utility we cannot control. The only thing I can see and everybody concerned is hopefully we can control human resource expense somehow. Okay, so when you look at the slide 19, expense related compensation, that means you include that in the outsourcing, or this is just for the our employee expense, related expense, like the retirement fund or health plan or something. What is it? Is it outsourcing expense are included somewhere?
No.
So it's going to depend. So you are getting a little ahead, so Jose will probably go into more detail when we get to that slide. But for the most part, if we have a position that we do budget for it in employee compensation, if there's work that needs to be done and we can't hire that position, then of course we outsource it.
Yeah.
But again, everything that we intend on insourcing, doing it with our own internal people, it is budgeted for on that slide 19.
Yeah. So my point is, when you say we're talking about employee compensation, did that include outsourcing expense as well, or that's separate? You are reporting separately.
So I'll give you an example, and hopefully they'll explain it. So for instance, Siobhan mentioned earlier about landscaping. So there are certain instances where we are unable to hire the volume of people that we need to bring in-house as employees. So make up a number. We say 10 employees, we've been unable to fill those positions. We will outsource them, right, to get the job done. But from a budget perspective, we want it to be done by in-house staff. So we budget for those 10 people, in my example, as employee compensation. So it's not, there's no double dipping, it's budgeted for employee compensation.
So it is included our employee compensation. Okay, thank you. That clarified. Okay, then I want to go back to slide, I think. Slide, let me see, my eyes.
Okay, so we're currently on slide 10.
Slide 9.
Okay, great.
Okay. Year 2021, we had about 728 employees. Now we have about 680 employees. That is about 7% decrease over the years. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at how much money we spend, year 2021, we were spending about 10 million, little over, including direct compensation or related compensation, you included that. And then year 2025, we are spending about 11.8 million plus. So that is about actually 17% increased. So in essence, your number of employees seems decreased 7% in that period of time. The money we spending for them increased 17%. So we are not saving very much money. And we don't know. I raised that many times because the technology improved all that and our efficiency may be increased. So we can have less employee with a better job or same amount of work. We can do that. Hopefully we can maintain or at least we can contain that expenditure, but somehow we are not able to. Is there any idea you have or how can we do it?
Sure. So the figures that I have, comparing 23 to 2024, I see it going up by 3.7% in terms of employee compensation. So yes, you see a dramatic decrease in terms of 734 full-time equivalent versus 697. But again, that is all three corporations. So GRF is going to account for quite a bit of this, and I acknowledge President Law's comment about maybe in the future we'll separate these to give thirds true impact of the decrease. But you also have to realize that we, during this time, you do have inflation, so the employees are getting between a 4% and 5% increase depending upon their performance for the year. So, which is not as high as what you actually, the actuals are only 3.7% more, right? So, but despite that, we gave more increases than that 3.7. And there was also some other areas where we did an evaluation of employee compensation as well, because minimum wage had gone up, right, in about that time frame. We had to give some more than 5% increases because by law, we had to bring them up to minimum wage. So there's a lot of contributing factors that go into employee compensation, unfortunately. It's not always cut and dry by just looking at two numbers and comparing the two.
Yeah, but one thing come to my mind, I don't know, this is basically out of management, and this goes to Sivan, but how you manage it, work needed to be done, how you allocated the people, how you manage it, and how you budgeted all that, that's out of management, Sivan. But we do a lot of we use a lot of consulting firm or consulting people coming here and they'll do this, do that, do that. The consulting fee, I don't know, we may be able to control somewhat. First, we can do less consulting unless it's really necessary. Second, we can decrease the amount of money we paying to the consulting, That's just come to mind. I'm not in the management, so I really cannot go into detail. But if I'm the one who managing it, I'm going to think about it. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions, comments before we move along? Great. Thanks, Jose.
Mark?
Nope.
Mark?
Oh. Sorry, Ira, missed your hand.
That's all right. That's all right. I just want to make a comment more like for the future as you did. I think part of the problem is that everybody was having with regards to substitution of outside labor for inside labor, using landscaping specifically, our outside costs are slightly higher than inside costs. So basically, let's say you're getting a 0.95 FTE for a designated FTE in-house. So that translates to, it's like a 0.95 outside. And so this is where I think a lot of the board members, and including myself in the beginning, things got lost in translation here because there are so many equivalents that aren't stated that it makes it more confusing. If it was cheaper than using it in-house, then I think everybody would be happier. But the point being is that how do you get, when you're budgeted for 20 people, but it costs you 24 people to get that 20, there becomes missing information in some of these areas that needs to be clarified moving forward. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, SK?
Yeah, just for my own, I'm trying to understand, I know what you explained to us so far, but it doesn't register my head at all. From 2023 to 2024, we got substantial number of FTE reduction, yet 23 to 24, we got about $1 million increase on the compensation. That part, I have to understand this. Second part is from 2024 to 2025, based on budget, we have about 20 employee reduction, yet it goes up higher yet. I need to understand this. I have to understand this.
Do we have the third FTEs for 23, 24, and 25?
You have shared staff, so the third doesn't have employees. That is our issue.
So, but the E on FTEs is equivalent, so I mean, I understand. We're not talking about specifics, but we're just trying to
Well-
generalize it. So I'm, again, they're looking at these total numbers, GRF, where I'm guessing it's probably more even from third's perspective than this humongous ramp down. So I'm
Correct.
just asking if
We,
you,
we will attempt to get that, and then the other wrinkle, similar to companies, is also fund, right? The numbers that you keep quoting are probably, you're looking at your business plan, that's going to be operating only. So in order to get you an apples to apples comparison, we need to get this into some kind of equivalent
Okay.
for third only, specifically for operating. That way you can take a look and do something.
Yeah,
like that.
and then in addition to that, we have been getting information as to, because we cannot hire, we are contracting out outside the source, expenses going up substantial amount as well. And those kind of things does not jive to my head at all. So that's my problem. I keep frowning and I don't understand, period.
I'll work with these guys and we'll see if we can help
Okay,
help figure that out.
okay.
Thanks.
All right, taking the opportunity now to take a look at your business plan here. On slide 12, this gives us an idea of what your actual business plan looks like. At least this is all summarized on one page. Specifically, it compares 2024 to 2025, and then it lets us know what happens with your assessment over on the right-hand column. We'll be going through each of these lines individually, but I did want to present them all to you on one slide here. We'll keep coming back to this slide again and again as we go through them. But all in all, again, we've said that the third basic assessment is proposed to increase $29.38. GRF one was $9.97 for a grand total of $39.35 increase. And in addition to that, the third also has some surcharges. So this is going to be unique to units with elevators, also with those that have access to garden villa rec rooms. So elevator operating is going to increase $2.42, and garden villa rec room fund we just got a recent update here. I guess the rec room committee has met, and they have asked us to bring this back down to $6.50. So for version 4, the 2025 plan will be $6.50. There will be no change based on what's planned to be replaced inside of those rec rooms. But that didn't get to us in time for us to put it into this proposal, but that'll be in the next proposal. But coming back to this business plan that we were talking about, let's start by focusing on the non-assessment revenues. And again, this is an area that you're planning on taking in a lot less revenue in 2025. The total in 2024, you took the equivalent of, it's $4.47 million is what you took in revenue, plan to take in revenue for 2025. For 2024, that number is $1.2 million. Here we have a little bit of a bar chart, not a bar chart, a circle chart that tells you where that revenue comes from. The biggest portion of that revenue is going to be fees and charges for services. So chargeable services, 53% of that. You see leasing and laundry also being fairly big pieces of this. But we'll take a look at these same exact numbers on the next page. this is all of your revenues by categories. And again, you see that 2024 plan. Last year we planned $4.5 million. For 2025, we plan on that being $1.9 million. And for those maybe seeing this for the first time, you'll see that we give you 3 years worth of actuals. So we let you know where we've been tracking. We also give you last year's plan and the proposed 2025 plan. And over on the right-hand side, we let you know what this does to your assessment. So, for example, that very first line, fees and charges, you see that in 2024, we have planned for revenue of $3.5 million. In 2025, we see a plan of $1 million. The difference there being $2.5 million. That means it's a positive number. Your assessment is increasing by $2.5 million. And again, the reason for that is going to be that in 2024, we had budgeted to take in revenue from the backlog. So there was a backlog. There was a certain number of cases that were pending. We will have addressed everything in 2024, so there will be no more cases for us to try to get more money out of. That's why in 2025 that revenue is not available, and that is the reason for that $2,500,000 increase, is that we will have fulfilled all of the backlog and there will be no more revenue available. As far as laundry is concerned, you see that number stayed constant at about $209,000, and that's just trending. That's a little 3-year average there of where you're trending. Miscellaneous, here you see slightly less revenue. I hate miscellaneous categories, right, because there's so much in there, but just to let you know, major items in here include lease processing, resale processing, late fees, and ultimately you have less revenue coming in from less additional occupancy fees. We had planned on a certain number, and we went through, and based on historical numbers, you're having less second occupant fees, additional occupants. So third isn't getting that revenue, so that's going to cost you $53,000 in revenue. So all in all, again, there's $2,553,000 less revenue planned for 2025 than there was in 2024. And happy to take questions on revenue.
Okay, looks like Jim may have a question or comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, we keep calling 2024 plan the $3.5 million as revenue. It's really reimbursement, because we've already spent all that money in 22 and 23 on paying for all the rehabilitation of the water damage. We're just trying to collect the money back. So it's more of a reimbursement. I think it kind of is a misnomer when you call it revenue. It might be revenue from a budget standpoint, but we're just getting back the money we already spent in 22 and 23.
Thank you.
Thanks
correct.
for that clarification. It helps. Ira, you had a question or comment, and then we'll go in the room.
Yeah, maybe it's time, since the miscellaneous category is so big, that you mentioned a couple of them in there that are thrown in, like the lease fees and some other fees, but maybe those could be categorized into a separate line item if the total is big enough, so we can see what kind of impact it. Let's say it's another $200,000 for those fees put together, the leasing fees and so on. That it might make sense to break them out at this point in time moving forward and leave the much smaller category or much smaller items in the subcategory miscellaneous together. That's all, just
Okay.
possibly break
All right.
things out.
And you know that the detail is on this previous slide 15, correct? Just if you're looking at your package there, Ira. All right, Reza and then Moon?
Yeah, back on 2024 plan, I think Jim said it, that we already spent money either in 2022 or 2023 for the damage restoration, because we spend it out of operation, right? We use the operation money. Okay, so that operation money is already spent in previous years. Now we're collecting money. The first question is, are we going to catch up in 2024 with all the collection? Or the $3 million that we put in there, that $2 million of it probably through damage restoration, are we recovering that? Or that's going to be pushed in 2025.
So my understanding, I've talked in length with the damage restoration team. We'll definitely finish the backlog in 2024.
Okay.
We may not recover quite as much as we had budgeted to recover, the
That was my question,
$2.25 million.
what would the shortfall? Because whatever shortfall is, that's going to be impact on 2025, 2024, because if we estimate a $2 million recovery, we only cover $1 million, then we have $1 million shortfall,
That's right,
right?
right.
So we don't know that yet.
Not quite, not quite. So-
Okay, it's not going to impact the next year by any means, the next year budget. Because those uncertainties, I don't know if it's going to translate to 2025 or not. That I don't
Okay,
know.
okay. I don't know if there's a
The only
response.
way that it would impact 2025 is if you have a surplus deficit in 2024. That will be, a recommendation would come from staff to offset that against one of your contingency funds in 2025. So for instance, in 2024, we just had the board approve transferring $531,000 because there was a deficit in 2023. If we experience that again in 2024, a similar recommendation will come from staff to take that money, transfer that money, better said, from the unappropriated expenditure fund.
So the impact would be on unappropriated funds.
Correct. It'll go against your savings account if we overestimate. the
And we don't
revenue.
know that till pretty much get to the latter part of the year, that what that would be.
We have some indicators that you're going to have some shortfalls in the current year, so not ready to present them here in this forum, but there probably will likely be a shortfall in
Yeah.
2025.
Well,
Four.
I guess we don't know till each cases have been, judged and
That's correct.
decided whether it's paid or no pay, we wouldn't know that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Moon?
Let me add that, but I have a different questions, but just come to. Okay, water damage, all that damage continued. It didn't stop when we forgive them. So the reason we didn't collect that was COVID. We didn't have enough employee to bill out. And so it has a backlog 2 or 3 years, and eventually 2-3 years is very hard to collect. We may have, let's say $1. If we bill $1, we can collect $1 in 1 month. But if 2-3 years later we send $1 bill, we may collect 50 cents. So it would be better to write off in a way, whatever, and that's what we decided, or somebody decided it was on the book. Okay, that's fine. But whatever going on now, okay, the damage control, we should send the bill as soon as possible. We should collect $1, expense $1. We should not, take any loss at all. Okay, that is my point. My real question I want to do that was laundry. Are we making money or are we losing money?
You are
Laundry.
losing.
So you have a laundry revenue about $200,000. Are we losing money or are we making money or even job?
So third subsidizes some of the costs of the laundry. So making money, losing money, you're technically losing money. But said differently, again, third is paying for some of it, similar to other shared costs that you have in the community.
Yeah, to my mind, okay, we bought the equipment, upfront cost, and then we maintain utility, okay, we pay for it, okay, and then we have to somebody send out to collect the coin. Okay, we spend a lot of money for laundry service. So to me, we may not be able to make money. Okay, it is fine when we, residents need laundry. So we do that as a laundry service, but we need to make it clear where we are. Are we losing money and give them service to the resident? Or at least are we making even, or are we making money? Okay, so let's say we use one employee or two employees to collect that coin, then as SK said, about 800 or 80 grand a year for the employee. If we use two employees, about 160, we already wiped out. Okay, so that's my question. If at least we don't want to use that and we want to have a credit card service instead of coin, then we don't have to send our people get the collected coin. Credit, whatever they put it in, it's gonna come to your office directly, right? So we need somehow looking into, somehow we have to make that even or better. I want you looking into it. I did send all the board member how to use a credit card. There was a service available. Thank you.
Yeah, and that is being looked at by the Steve and Carlos. Credit card sounds good, just make it happen, but there's expenses to make that happen. So they're doing an analysis to try to understand how much all of this currently costs, what are some of the options are, how much those cost, and they'll bring that hopefully back to the board soon to help make the decision as to how to go forward. And again, as part of that decision is whether we want to make money potentially or break even versus lose money, and whether in order to not lose money that requires a increase in the fees to do laundry. We may not want to do that. So those are things that the board will have to make a decision on hopefully within the next few months.
Laundry service is a real essential service, more than golfing, more than swimming. It's a real essential service. Mm-hmm. Somehow we have to provide, even if we eat up all the expense. So, but somehow the art of management, you have to make as little impact as possible.
Okay, SK?
Yeah. In addition to that, would it be possible we can come up with what the shared cost of the laundry system that we have or not? Is data available?
So yes, it's available, and that's the analysis that President Laws was just referring to.
Oh,
So
okay.
yes, we know the numbers, but we are going to be presenting it in a short time frame. So we're looking at scheduling the meetings in the very near future.
Okay, and a quick question, miscellaneous is now close to coming down to, is a 2/3 of the $1 million. So what are those?
So, thank you. Actually, I was going to address that. Ira talked a little bit about that. And just so you know, everything that you're taking a look at on your screen right now is in summary. We've also given you a lot more detail in your actual agenda. And if I can turn you to page 6 of your agenda, 6 of 49, I'll put it up here on the screen. So on the slide here, we just listed that $692,000. But here on your screen, under miscellaneous, it'll give you all, I don't know, a dozen accounts or so that adds up to that $691,000. It's got additional occupants in there. It's got transfer fees. It's got quite a bit of it. But the big change, again, comes from the additional occupant fee. As we took a look at that, saw that additional occupant fee is hovering right around $50,000 historically, and that's what we reverted it back to. So that's going to be the biggest change from last year to next. But just to let you know, everything that we're talking about, it has plenty of detail in the agenda that was distributed last week. Here in this meeting, we're going to talk about things at a more high level.
Okay, so non-sale transfer fee, what is that?
It's a transfer fee that Third collects. You can see it's a relatively small dollar amount. We budgeted $3,000 for total.
Is that from sales of the home or what?
It's a non-sale, so if you're transferring from one ownership to another, we have to take a little bit of a fee to do all the paperwork.
Processing
It's a
fee?
processing fee.
Oh, I see. Well, it's a separate question, but we are not getting from resale fee, $7,500.
No.
That's
Correct.
for the GRF. I know that.
That's
So
true.
we're getting zero out of that, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Is it based on rules and regulation we have, or what's based on that? It's separate, but I'm questioning because I had a lot of questions about that.
If you're referring to the transfer fee,
Yes.
$7,500, so it's specific to-
$7,500.
It's specific to GRF, so they grandfathered, so California law, Davis Sterling, if you're familiar, has a specific provision within civil code stating that you are not able to charge a transfer fee at the time of sale. However, GRF was already charging this fee before the law came into existence, and therefore they grandfathered into it. So there's been some legal analysis to determine whether or not other mutuals can qualify to charge that, and at the moment, the analysis has said that, or the opinions have been that, no, you're not.
So we will not be able to tap in at all then?
A Third Mutual won't, but our members will because it goes to GRF and they pay a GRF monthly
Yes.
assessment, and hopefully, as a result of GRF getting that additional fee, their monthly assessments don't raise as high or that kind of thing.
The reason I'm bringing that up is this. According to 2024 budget, United is about 34%, 35%, Third 34%, and the GRF is 69%. I believe it is because of
That's
those
a lot
kind
of
of money
percent.
goes to GRF directly. Why are we not getting it? Because we are the people who actually making it happen. Why are we not getting some tap in that money so that we can get the reserve fund increase?
So it's a
Thank
state,
you.
it's a state law that effectively down to state.
SK, if you'd like, we can talk about that offline.
Yeah, I know, but I want to say it publicly so that everybody understands that. If we need to change the rules and regulations, let's do it. Thank you. All right, let's try it first.
Any other questions, comments before we let Jose move on? Go ahead, Jose.
All right. So that was covering revenue. Now let's move on to the expense portion of your budget here. And again, to put things in perspective, the 2024 plan, you see that as far as expenses were concerned, that's $435.18 per matter per month. In 25, that went up to $452,000 per month. So said another way, the 2024 expenses were $32.2 million. The 25 expenses are $33.5 million. So there's a difference of $1.3 million there. A total of a 4% increase year over year as far as expenses are concerned. We'll talk about each of them individually, but wanted again to provide you this pie chart to let you know that the majority of your expenses are going to be revolving around employee compensation, insurance, and utilities. So I like to provide this graphic so we can see the magnitude, right? We'll certainly answer all your questions, but hopefully we'll be focusing on some of the bigger magnitude issues. And of course, the biggest of those is going to be employee compensation. So this is the topic that we keep coming back to, right? So here you can see from 2024 to 2025, it's essentially there's no change. There's a 0.2% increase here. So you're going to ask me what happened? Is no one going to get raises? Of course, people are going to get raises. There's planned wage adjustments, but they're offset by, as we keep talking about this backlog, as we were processing the backlog, in addition to that, we brought temp help on. We brought temp help on to help us process all of that backlog information. As we told you, that backlog in 2025 will be done. So you saw a little bit of a savings here in employee compensation because we won't need those temp staff to help us process those things. Additionally, the increase is offset by union wages in landscape as a result of a planned reduction in the irrigation budget. So at your direction, we reduced the irrigation budget, so you saw a lot of the expense come out of this line here. And also some of the nursery operations were moved from operating to reserve. So again, these on your screen that you see here are going to be operations. Again, not really a change from last year, from 2025 to 2024 because of less temp help and some movements in landscape, reduction in irrigation, and also moving to nursery. Line number 2 there, expenses unrelated. Same thing here. You'll see this one's a little bit of a higher percentage, 1.5%. Same reasons, but this one increased a little bit more because of the workers' comp. This is one of the things that Steve talked about at the beginning. Workers' compensation rates have gone higher. It's not that we're having any additional instances of workers' compensation being used. However, it's another insurance, and unfortunately, insurances have continued to balloon upwards. So those are the reasonings here for your changes in employee compensation. Moving on to materials and supplies. Materials and supplies had a small increase of 1.6% or $14,000 due to increases in material costs really throughout all departments. I do want you to know there isn't a set inflation rate that we use. We ask the departments in those specific areas because not all materials are increasing at the same rate. So I know that petroleum-based materials are typically a lot higher. Not so pertinent for third, some of the other mutuals, but appliances were also pretty high. But altogether, your materials and supplies have increased $14,000 or 1.6%. Which is pretty reasonable. As far as utilities are concerned, there's not much of a change in electricity, a 2.7% increase or $12,000, and that's due to more usage based on recent trends. So we take your current usage, we talk to Edison and find out what's going to go on. They have recently come out and said that they anticipate that their rates will stay steady into 2025, which is a good thing. That's one of the reasons that you don't see a big increase here. But they're holding steady at about 29.5 cents per kilowatt hour is what you're ending up paying. Water and sewer, unfortunately, I don't have that kind of news for you. Both water and sewer have increased fairly substantially, having to do with new rates. Otoro Water District in July puts out the rates for the following year. And just like us, they have operating and fixed costs. And those sewer costs, they have passed on. The sewer costs themselves have increased 14%. So you see a big increase here for us. As far as water is concerned, same idea. Their fixed costs went up by 8%. Their fixed costs went up 15%. Their variable costs went 8%. So we see it in everything that we do here, but altogether those go up about $175,000 each for water and sewer. Some pretty big increases there coming to third, unfortunately. As well as trash, as you know, the Laguna Woods is entered into a franchise agreement. So we have to go with our particular vendor. When we got the new vendor in, they noticed that they were substantially under market, and the agreement that they had was that they were going to have some pretty big increases for the first 5 years. Happy to report that 2025 is the last of those big years. Sad to report that 25% is the last of those big years. For third, the increase is 17% as stipulated in that contract that was signed, 17% for 2025. Moving on to the next section here, which is legal fees. The legal fees are trending upward. You see an increase there from $300,000 to $392,000, an increase of $92,000 or 31%. And that's based on recent trends of resident-related legal issues. And again, these are going to be the stuff that third pays for directly, meaning having to do with resident issues here. Professional fees here have increased $14,000, and that is almost exclusively due to the on-site contracted reserve study. So we use a contracted reserve specialist to come on-site to help us put together a reserve study. They take a look at all of your assets. Per Davis Sterling, they have to physically evaluate these assets at least once every 3 years. 2025 is that year, so they charge us a little bit more as they take more time to actually come on site and view these things. The other 2 years are substantially lower, so I get to enjoy those, but 2025 again is that year. Equipment rental, a little bit of a smaller dollar amount there, and this is a contingency that we have for man lift and storage containers and other equipment that's primarily used in carpentry there, $9,000 for third. And the question we had a little bit earlier is, hey, where is all of this contractor or outside services? We do house it here in this line called outside services. You can see that this is a pretty significant line at $2.3 million. There's a big increase here of $956,000 or 71%. And it's really due to two things. One is going to be the landscape. As we talked about, we're increasing 2 cycles for shrub bed maintenance. We're going from 4 to 6. That alone is going to cost an additional $700,000. Again, this is outside service. This is all outsourced. And the other big deal here is going to be fumigations. So fumigations in 2024, we had scheduled 53 buildings in third to be fumigated. In 2025, we've scheduled 107. So that was an increase of $278,000. So between landscape 700 and fumigations 278, that's the majority of your increase there as far as outside services are concerned. Repair and maintenance, this is essentially your elevator contract. Your elevator is contractually going up about 9% there. As you can see, $54,000. I will say that this is, what's it called? Not everyone pays it, but man, I forgot my terms here. My apologies. Surcharge. This is a surcharge only to those areas with an elevator. So this isn't something that's shared by the community. Nevertheless, again, it's a big increase of $54,000 for those that do participate in the elevators. The next section here is other operating expense. Other operating expense, again, has a lot of line items in it. You can take a look at it in your agendas, but I'll go over them quickly. They have uniforms and postage and training and education and some other of the big line items that are here. A relatively small change of $9,000 here, and that is going to be almost entirely in training and education, as your landscape folk are getting a lot better training. They're having their tailgate trainings, as they're called, and better tracking of that training. So pretty good investment of your money there, an increase of $9,000. Income tax is shown here, but as we talked about, that was moved to reserve, so that's 0 on both 24 and 25. Insurance. So some happy news, of course, to report is that insurance here, you see a grand total decrease of $535,000. This is made up primarily of 2 items. One is going to be property insurance. Property insurance decreased by $700,000 as you are now sharing a policy with United. And so that is a good thing that everyone participates in, $700,000 savings. And the bad side to that is hazard and liability has continued to increase. That is increasing by $165,000. And that is what we're anticipating the premium for hazard and liability to increase the next time it comes up. We also have uncollectible accounts here for $120,000. You see, we anticipate that's going upwards a little bit as you're experiencing a lot more matters, not a lot more, but some more matters with longer term delinquent fees. And additionally, we're also going to be running into some of the stuff that you had from damage restoration, your backlog, if you will. This is when we're going to start to see them more in 2026, those that may not end up paying. So we ended up putting that in here, so a little bit of an increase in uncollectible accounts. And the last item here is cost allocations, and this is going to be your allocated costs coming over from HR, IT, vehicle maintenance, all those items that don't have direct impact, but that we do consider interdepartmental allocations. You see a slight change here in $22,000 increase, or 1.7%. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions about expenses, and hopefully I'll remember my words.
Okay, Reza?
Thank you. The reason I'm focusing on compensation and manpower is because 60% of our cost is manpower. So the other 40% is everything else. 5% of 60% is much better than 5% of 40%. So that's what, usually I focus on, see what we can do to make it better. If we go back on slide 19, back in slide 9, we talk about from 2024 to 2025, less 16 FTE. Am I correct? What % of that relate to third? I understand this total number. I don't want to take 16 out of it because that doesn't make sense. That's total number. I understand that. Is it 1/3 of it is probably come out of the
For the
third?
most part, I believe all of it. All of it was, wait.
All of the 16?
All of it was GRF. So no impact on third. So Jose mentioned a couple times now that it was a GRF golf maintenance that was outsourced. So the difference that you're seeing, the decrease of 16 from 24 to 25, in total, that is the outsourcing of the golf maintenance.
But we didn't let anybody go. Why the number changed? Because everybody that was there is still here. We just subcontract that work. People are here, right? Or we let some people go?
No.
Let some contractors go, perhaps.
Possibly, you're right. So, but for the most part, from an employee perspective, so our employee headcount has gone down that we showed
Yeah,
on.
that's what
slide
I'm
number-
asking. The 16 headcounts is all GRF, you're telling us, and it's all related to the golf course?
Those decreases, yes.
What happened people were doing the golf course? Where did they go?
So we took some of those, the difficulties that we are having filling other landscape positions within the golf area, we moved them from the golf maintenance over to other areas within GRF.
Okay, so we didn't let anybody go.
No.
So from 2024 to 2025, there is no change in the staff headcounts.
Yes, there is, because you're,
I'm trying to
okay,
understand.
so assume you have 20 vacancies currently in landscaping. You have 16 employees from golf maintenance, so that's 36 employees. You're going to move those 16 over to landscape. You're reducing,
Okay, so in 2024, we had 600,
The answer was vacancies.
yeah, we backfilled those vacancies.
We're filling the
Yes.
vacancies,
Okay,
yes.
so we really didn't reduce anything. We take bunch from one area, put them in the other area, correct?
Well,
That's
those
what it is?
vacancies, and back to what Mark just said, those vacancies are being filled by outside service. Because the work's getting done, right? So we're using outside service to do the work. Now we're saying, hey, we don't need the outside service anymore.
We have
We're
these
gonna-
people
we're gonna
coming
use
doing
these
that.
people, yeah.
So the outside service is gone, but
Exactly.
we staff, we still have the same number of staff, quote unquote, because we didn't let anybody go.
But we let the outside services go.
I understand, this, that doesn't count as our head counts. I don't count the subcontractor as our head count. Other than that, we have about 1,000 people. We
Yeah.
don't count contractor. I'm looking at the
But we count
head
that as,
counts that we have.
But we budgeted for those
Yes.
headcounts.
Exactly. That's
So-
what I'm looking at. And with that, we took some people from that area, brought them in this area which we had vacancies, and
Yes.
backfilled those vacancies. And those 16 that were there were subcontracted. But the overall staff number didn't change,
Sure, correct.
correct? Okay, at least I get that one.
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
All right, with that, and none of that now impact the third, correct? All of
Correct.
it is from somewhere else.
correct.
So our compensation stay exactly the same because we just backfill things that we had, correct? Is that?
You had some other offsets that Jose had mentioned a moment ago about taking care of landscaping as well, that you increased.
Not according to the, to the budget. Budget says 8.3 million versus 8.28 million for the employee compensation. That's third, right?
for operating.
Yeah, but you can see here that it went up by 13, again, this is just operating, but it only went up by $13,000.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it has zero impact on our compensation for the staff for third. I'm talking about third now, not the overall. The overall, I understand. We took
Okay.
those people, put them here to backfill those positions, and now they have a subcontract and they doing it with the subcontract. Now we doing with the orange staff. Two additional cycle, because that's all it translated to, the 16 people. We are not getting anything else out of it. 16 people came over, or 18 people, we're getting 2 cycle out of it.
That's completely different.
Huh?
The 2 cycles are completely different.
Then what are we doing with those people then, when we brought them over, if they are not doing 2 additional
That's
cycles?
outside services, it's $700,000 to do 2 extra cycles. It has nothing to do with employee
With those
compensation.
people?
No.
It's just backfilling.
So how are we doing the 2 additional cycles? 700,000, we're gonna subcontract that?
Yes.
Yes.
So we got 16 people and we're gonna subcontract 700,000.
Well, yeah, two different corporations, right? And they're independent of one another.
It's all gonna be incurred, 700,000 is for third.
Yes.
Additional cycle, and now we've got 16 additional people.
The 16 additional people are going to remain in
They're
GRF.
gonna share also.
16 people is GRF entirely.
Without the GRF.
No.
They stayed in GRF, right? So in the example that Siobhan gave, where she mentioned there's 36 individuals, right? There's some landscaping that was being outsourced because we couldn't fill those positions. We shifted the golf maintenance, 16 people. They filled those positions that were
All in
vacant.
GRF.
And everything was contained within GRF, yes.
What? I'm confused. Sorry. I'll do my check. It's not a good way to kind of slice it here. I just try to get the, what's happening so I can dig into it and understand it.
Sure. To President Law's point earlier, we will do our best to provide a separate FTE presentation going forward.
Because I thought there's some of those FTE had to us, now it's everything in GRF, and GRF subcontracted at 16, it's still, they saved $80,000, there's something wrong with us, because we don't know how to. That's a good thing for me. I need to look at it, I don't understand it better. Thank you.
SK?
Yeah, regarding the 2 additional cycle, what does that mean? Is it 4 cycle per year?
It's going from 4 to 6.
So today we do 4 shrub bed
4
maintenance cycles.
shrub cycle. Now, it's going to be 6 cycles.
Yes, we're going to outsource it.
Entire third shrubs will be maintained 6 cycles,
Correct?
Yes.
including slopes.
No.
No, slope is 4 cycles,
Slopes is still
cycle?
2.
still 2.
Although we'll talk about whether we can afford a third, but yeah, for right now, slopes is 2 for the contracted slopes.
Yes. Okay. So, okay, I'll think about it. Thank you.
Okay, Moon, you had a question?
It's confusing.
It can be, yes, Moon?
Thank you. Can you look at the slide 18? Yeah. Okay. Several questions, but let me ask the simplest one first. Legal expenses 1%. Is that only third mutual legal expense or BMS expenses somewhat included, or GRF expense also included here, or only third mutual legal expense?
So it's all thirds expense, but inclusive of that is some employee compensation expenses that comes over from BMS.
Legal expense, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. This is beside the point. I took a third mutual to the small claims court for about $6,000. My damage of, and then I found out later on this meeting in closed section, so I cannot say all the numbers, but my case, small claim court usually don't have any lawyers involved, but somehow Third Mutual give my case to the lawyer. Lawyer charged much more than what I was asking for. So maybe that's what legal expense. I don't know how we Third Mutual decided to report to the legal counsel. Okay, that's my question. Second one is to follow up the raises, employee compensation or human resource compensation. Okay, this portion is really discussed because this is the only part we think we can somehow put the hand on. Okay, when you look at the employee compensation is 35%, and then outside the sourcing is about 7%. So that all comes 42%. So this is the service, corporation. We are doing service. So, manpower or human resource, the expense is higher than any other material or that. But, we have to understand that at least we are spending pretty close to half of our income to the human resource right now. Okay, somehow, hopefully we can decrease that. Okay, then page, let's say, slide 27, 28, or slide 27.
Sorry, we're not
We
there
haven't
yet.
got there yet.
Oh, we are not on that? Okay, sorry. I was well ahead.
So I will come back to slide number 19. I agree with you. These are the ones that we want to give the most time and attention to as far as compensation is concerned. And I will remind us again that all in all, out of this $8.5 million expense, this has increased by $66,000, a pretty small percentage. We've talked about all the different reasons why. When we go over to outside services did increase by $950,000. Again, at your direction, we put in $700,000 for the extra 2 cycles, and we have doubled the number of buildings that we're doing for fumigation for another $278,000.
Yeah.
We're keeping as close an eye as we can, and I just want to reiterate that.
If you report the employee compensation and outsourcing expense separately, somewhat it's misleading to human resource expenditure, because if you're going to lower employee compensation and then you're going to increase it outside, and you may spend more, but we may be misled our human expense is decreasing. In essence, it may going up. So that needed to be combined, somehow report to us, so we can see that how much we are spending to the human activity or human resource. So, I want you to put together. Otherwise, it's misled. You may mislead us.
Okay, got it, thanks. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, thanks. Thanks, Board, and Jose.
All
How are we
right.
doing on reserve contributions?
On slide 23, we'll talk next about reserve contributions. And reserve contributions, we project to go up $13.86 per matter per month. And we'll show you a little bit of detail on this, just so we are talking all the same language. When we talk about reserve contributions, Third uses 3 of them, which are the replacement fund, elevator, and laundry. You can see all the different contributions that are on these, but I guess what it really comes down to is going to be as far as your reserve study is concerned. Here's the summary page of your reserve study. It lets us know that we're projecting to start 2025 with about $23 million in your reserve funds. The fully funded reserve balance, this is what they are anticipating that you should have in the bank in order to take care of all of your needs, is $86 million. That puts you at 26.6% funded. I will say that down on the bottom here, you see a little measurement, a little ruler by which associations are measured. And this is supposed to give us an idea of how likely there is for a special assessment. You see that you're just a little bit below the medium level, which is what we try to shoot for. I will say that this is the same measurement that is used for all homeowners associations, whether they be large or small. I will tell you that the majority of homeowners associations don't have $23 million at their disposal. That doesn't mean that we need to take our foot off the gas, but you're still relatively well funded at 26.6%. I want to also show you what the 30-year looks like. And this is what has been projected for you over the next 30 years. And I want to take a moment and just kind of explain here what's going on. So here you see all 30 years listed on the left-hand side there. Towards the middle there, you see the percent funded, the one next to the color. You'll see that for the next little bit, we do anticipate your reserves starting to dip down a little ways. And the majority of this is going to be because of how much we're projecting in expenses. And all the way on the far right, you see reserve expenses. This is what we're projecting to use up each and every one of those years. And the big deal here that has changed recently is going to be the inclusion of the prior to paint landscape. And just to remind you, that program is anticipated to run you about $40 million over the next 15 years. Obviously, that's a pretty significant expense. It's going to go on for the next 15 years, again, $40 million. And what that means is there in the middle, you see some of the percentages. We anticipate, in order for you to meet all your obligations, that for the next 5 or so years, we do anticipate recommending a contribution of a 15% increase to these funds. And that's what's going to be required in order for you to be able to fund all of your programs. But again, the biggest recent addition has been that $40 million prior to paint landscape program. You'll see that once we get out of the next 5 years, then the contributions revert back to a little bit more manageable, 1% per year thereafter. Again, this is something that is required by boards to approve a 30-year plan in concept. Of course, you approve specific expenditures for next year's plan, which we've already gone over, all the different expenditures in that plan. But I wanted to give you an idea of what your long-term outlook is for this plan. So you're where you need to be, but with the caveat of letting you know for the next several years, it's going to be probably relatively big increases, all things being equal, no policy changes. We don't know what kind of AB 1572 regulations that we might get. That was another big one that's affecting you depending on how much turf you may have. This is something that I wanted to discuss with you and let you know that, yes, we're on a path, but it's not going to be a fun path here for the next little bit. Happy to discuss this, but I just want to show you what those numbers look like in a little bit more legible font. Here
And Jose, if I can just have you pause, just to reemphasize, those 15% increases that you're looking at, the recommendation here, that's only to the reserve fund. It's not an overall 15% increase. Assuming all other expenses go up by about 4%, this additional 15 to your reserves combined, it would be about a 7% increase, right? So as opposed to 5, what you're seeing now. So that 15% can be a little scary when you see it at first.
Well, we have been saying all along that we're spending money now to save money later. And, you see after these next few years of high percentage increases, it goes down to 1, and yet we still get into the yellow and the green. So, that's a decision that this board had made, and it may need to be changed going forward depending upon, as you say, Jose, what other things come up like AB 1572. So, but as we looked at that program and shared with everybody, that will end up paying for itself within 7 years or so once it gets started, and then we're hopefully making money for quite some time. So,
well put. So again, on slide 27 here, a little bit more legible font, maybe give us some dollars to what we were talking about. In the dark font, in the bold font there, you'll see that for 2025, the replacement fund contribution is about $170, and we do anticipate that going up next year to about $196, so about a $26 increase here for this portion. But again, sometimes you got to spend money to save money a little bit later, and that's what we're looking at here. Additionally, like I said, there were 3 funds in all in the replacement fund. Here's your elevator. We don't anticipate any changes in that contribution, staying solid at a $5 per man per month increase, similar to the laundry. Also, I wanted to talk about some of the expenditures. We've talked about, we went line item by line item and talked about all the different expenditures that are going to come out of the reserves. I'm just going to update you with some of the changes that we've made from the last time that we spoke. And I'd like to start here with paving and concrete. So at the third direction for version 2, we added $60,000 here. That was following the elimination of funding for the major asphalt repair program. We said, hey, we're going to do some of that seal work instead. Staff later received actual estimates for the anticipated seal coat work in 2025, and it ended up being $35,000 increase instead of a $60,000 increase. That's why you see a reduction. But additionally, we've been asked to eliminate $140,000 from this. The board has decided to postpone the Parkway concrete program, leaving only the seal coat. So for the final version of this, we're going to recommend this line be only $81,000, only for the seal work. We're going to take out the concrete workers here as well. And that's a decision that was made at your most recent MNC meeting. And then for plumbing replacement, again, at the board direction, we have included an additional $500,000 as funds to have available to take care of any plumbing or any in-wall situations. So I think that's a good idea to make sure that you're taking care of your infrastructure. That's going from $200,000 to $700,000. And again, all that has been included in your reserve work that we saw on the previous page. And lastly, over in landscape, talking about that AB 1572, that requirement for us to reduce turf, that program has been postponed to 2026. So we took $1.5 million out of that and moved that over to 2026. Again, you have about 4 years to take care of all that, so we're not up against anything just yet. And all that money has already been included in your reserves program. So in a nutshell, that's what we're looking at for reserves. Again, this is something that has been in the works, just like we're showing you slide number 26. Just like we're showing you here what we have planned into the future. I do want to let you know that that 9.85% increase, that is what we had planned last year for 2025. So Third has a good plan. I think you're going to end up in a great situation, and this is the next step in your plan, is to go forward and to fund this at this particular level. But happy to take any questions on reserves.
I was just going to make a quick comment on AB 1572. I mean, we know it's out there, but we really don't know enough about what it is. It's there are exceptions, so we'll be spending some time over the next several months on trying to understand what those exceptions are. It's a new law for everybody. It hasn't been challenged yet. It's got to be expensive for not just Laguna Woods Village, but many other HOAs. So we're hoping for some challenges and some potential delays, although we don't know, but it's just new enough that we were struggling to put $1.5 million into something that we really weren't sure about. So there will be work on turf reduction continuing is the expectation, maybe just not quite as aggressive as what was originally planned. But we do want Kurt and his team to continue planning it, thinking through all the issues that might come up so that once we do start it, if we do have to start it, it's very clean, very well run, efficient, effective, that kind of thing. So I just wanted to make that comment. David.
Okay, we've got slide 26 up. As treasurer, I need to be very conservative. I am concerned about the number of red years that we have. And I'm concerned particularly about the 15% increases to the reserves that we're going to make for the next 5 years or so in order to fund PTP. Now, here's my question. We're spending money to save money. I've got a pretty good idea of how much we're spending. Do we have a good idea of how much it's going to save us?
Yes.
As treasurer, what I would like to see is a net present value analysis of the PTP program. I understand the numbers are soft, but we need to have some idea of, okay, are we going to save enough on this program to justify the cost? Do we have an alternate slide to slide 26 that shows the contribution to reserves without PTP?
Sure. So we can go ahead and pull that up in just a moment.
So just, well, the slide is coming up. So, Kurt and his team put together a spreadsheet year by year for 15 years. I don't know that it necessarily had net present value, but definitely had, cost savings based upon our current understanding of the paint program plan and the landscaping effort around each of those buildings. So I would think it should be, one, you may not have seen that spreadsheet, and two, turning that into a net present value shouldn't take much effort.
No,
to get you
it's just a
the
matter of
information
present
you need.
valuing everything. The slide that's up is an alternate version that shows the next 7 years. We are in the yellow. We move the red years back about 6 or 7 years. And I don't object to spending money on the PTP program if we can get as solid a number as we can. I mean, these are all projections, we all understand that. Sure. What I would like to see is a positive net present value on the project. And the larger that net present value is, then I think it's easier to justify, okay, we're taking a little bit of a risk here making this investment, but there's a payoff in it. Because what we have right now is we have 10 years of red coming up, 15% contributions, contribution increases, to the reserve fund, and I'm not entirely comfortable that we've got a solid defensible basis for doing that. What I would like to see us do is get some preliminary numbers on that really as soon as is practical, and depending on what they show, we may want to reevaluate the prior to paint program. Does this make sense to everybody? Understand what I'm saying?
I see Ira, who has his hand up.
Ira's got his hand up, and I kind of hoped he would.
Let's see what Ira has to say.
Okay, I'm going to keep it pretty general. In the beginning, the PTP was analyzed on how much extra turf to take out that made it viable. And part of that viability for me was that there had to be an ROI prior to midway. So that means by year 7, I tasked Landscape at the time to come, and they ran the numbers by every 10% to how much turf to take out and so on, up and down, back and forth. And we save FTEs going along, all the way along, but the turning point's around year 7, midway, let's say. And that's why you're going to start to see changes later on. If you went back to the other slide, not on this page 41, but the equivalent that you had before, where the red and the yellow were, you would find it in a different place. What's happening, at least and things may have changed since I've been off the landscape committee, but here you'll see, yes, it's red because sooner, because we're spending the money now, and we will get that payback to put us in the yellow and to keep us going into the green later on. So you dabble, instead of being yellow, red, yellow as in the other, you're red, yellow, and then green. So you're constantly moving in my opinion, in the correct direction by spending money in the right place to help save money in the long term. And this is a long-term savings, because when it is done, there's not just the savings you had along the way, but there's permanent savings from the entire village that we will be saving, as we won't have to go through basically the reconstruction in the same manner that we did before, it'll be a lot more savings. And yes, it is down the road. But with that said, all the numbers that we have going into this that were put together to see whether if this would work or not from a financial point of view, all say yes all the way around. And that's all I'm going to say.
Okay. And I guess really what David is asking for is just some deeper analysis so that he can look at it. Then he'll share his comments with the board, and the board can discuss it, I'm sure, before September 17th. So that we can, and we do unfortunately need to keep AB 1572 in the back of our minds, because if, all of our hopes that maybe it's not that big a deal don't come true, and it is, that's another $10 or so million of work that needs to be done sooner rather than later. So we have to keep our options open. Okay.
Yeah.
And
all
also,
I'll say, Mark, all I'll say is that the numbers that David's looking for are really already there, and they've actually been hardened slightly since the original multiple run-throughs of when we get our ROI. So whatever he gets from landscaping and finance should be even more accurate than they were when we voted on them to put the program in last year. Okay. So that's all I can say.
sounds good. All right. Reza?
Yeah, I think if you go to slide 27, we're talking about 2025 expending $14.5 million out of the reserve fund. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you break that down? I know some of the major project, paint program, epoxy lining. We were talking about AB 5037, whatever that is, but we canceled that. What are the major issues that is sitting there?
So this is going to be on your agenda items, pages
Yeah.
15 through 17. So there's quite a bit there's 3 pages worth of programs
Okay.
in there, and we've gone over them.
Yeah,
line by
but
line.
my question is, we have some regular maintenance that we do in this community. And those are part of the operation cost when we do the regular maintenances. Like, we do the roof, we do the regular 15 years or 20 years paint. Things like epoxy lining, why we didn't have a maintenance program for our pipelines that we have to now suddenly have a major cost on our hand. It's going to happen the same thing with the turf reduction. We know that, well, we don't want to spend money because we are not sure, but as we push it back and back, then we have less and less time to spend a lot of money, and then it's going to be a major headache at that time. So why we are not looking at, in all the departments, on regular maintenance that reduces the issue with the reserve fund and emergency fund? We need to have a comprehensive maintenance program. I've said that in the past too, for everything, for all the aspect of what is in our community, that we do routine and regular and preventive maintenance in order to reduce these kind of issues. Right now, because we had so many water intrusion and pipeline problem, that we suddenly decided we're going to spend millions of dollars to epoxy the lines. While if from 10 years ago we were cleaning the pipes and we were taking care of the pipes, we wouldn't have that. They called somebody's, failure is my emergency today. I don't want the emergency. I want planning. I want to look at things that how we can, because this, for the next 5 years, we're looking at depletion in a reserve fund. To the point, it's very concerning. We're going to be in red. And that's not good for the community. The last thing that the community wants is a special assessment. And we have to, but we need to have a more comprehensive preventive maintenance, regular maintenance, and understanding of what need to be done ahead of time rather than become emergency, so we have to go to the reserve fund. That's my point. I haven't seen any. I, asked in the past. There are here and there, but unless we do something more, on a basis of, regular basis and having a program for things, we're going to be facing these things. What is next? Beside epoxy lining, beside the, paint program, beside this, beside that, what is next?
So-
I don't know. We have a lot of issues in this community. We're dealing with the houses, we're dealing with infrastructure, with the underground. What is our program to take care of this in order not to be in the hot seat all the time? I mean, it's not good sitting in the hot seat and worried about tomorrow. That's my point. Thanks.
And I just want to remind everyone that we do have pages and pages of these programs that we do. I mean, we have everything from, prior to paint, where we're going through and making sure that there's no rot. We have slurry seal. All those are in anticipation to save money later. You spend a little bit of money slurry sealing, and then you don't have to replace the concrete as often. But at the end of the day, our community is 60 years old.
Yeah, I understand, but our
unfortunately.
pipe hasn't been cleaned for 60 years. Suddenly we are like, whoops, we have to do epoxy lining, all these lines, it's going to take 100 years to do that. And everyone jumping up and down, how the hell we're going to do that? I call it lack of planning. That's what I call it.
Hopefully, in your current role in landscape committee, M&C committee, you can continue to keep fighting for these things and hopefully help turn some of these things around. Moon?
Thank you. Since this this chart is on the screen, let me ask this: 25 and 26. There is a 5 million increase of expenditure. Is it year 2026? We have a major something coming up.
Well, for 2026, we have $3.5 million planned for prior to paint landscape. That's one of them. It's going to be some of the. That's what I have immediately here in front of me. We can probably find some more. 3.5 million for that in 26, 3.3 million in 2027.
And I believe we also introduced the AB 1572 beginning in 2026. I believe that's another one of the big components. So yes, you have some big ticket items coming forward.
Okay. Actually, that was not my question. When I saw it, there's something going on there. Okay, look at the slide 25. We have about 26% right now for reserve, what they're recommending. Our risk is pretty high because of that. And they are recommends, then you look at the slide 26, and you look at, we are trying to get the year 2050, so we are risk is going down.
Correct.
Okay. But you look at that slide, let's say expenditure, no. Slide 27. Okay, ending balance of the, the reserve fund is about 16 million, 11 million, 17 million, right? Ending balance. And then those 17 million we are investing is a treasury bond, which will never beat inflation. Okay, treasury bond is never gonna be better than the treasury. So, 17 million sitting in the treasury bond, we are losing money. Okay, we cannot keep up with inflation. And then when you look at the expenditure, okay, 13 million, we have a reserve ending is 19 million. Then you look at elevator, the year, slide 28, expenditure is 200 grand, and then we have an ending balance of 3.5 million, which is more than 15 times more than annual expenditure we have a reserve. 15 times more we have in my hand. Okay, then we look at the laundry, pretty much similar. Okay, and the expenditure, many other things. Expended from landscaping, I don't know, they don't have, it's just expend. They don't have a reserve, how much reserve we have. Okay, so my point is, if I'm the one who managing it, I know when you look at annual expenditure, pretty much similar, not drastic change, except next year you are expecting 5 million increase. So we have a pretty good idea annually how much we need. You don't need 10 times or 15 times more than annual expenditure to reserve. I would say maybe 2 times, 3 times. I consider that very conservative. If we have a 15 times more, that's ultra super conservative. And then with that money, we are losing money investing in treasury bond. Something is not click to my mind. What are we doing? Okay, I was very frustrated this year and the year before. We have some money coming from insurance and the reimbursement or whatever, and this year also some money from somewhere, about $500,000. Last year was about, not $500,000 this year, last year it was about $1 million. And then that all, I was insisting on sending that to the resident, and our voted down, and it all went to reserve. So are we really trying to make that reserve, which, do we need that much reserve?
Yes.
And this what they're recommending here is one of the institutional recommending. So we are following that institutional recommendation, okay? That is very, very prudent to do. But when you're really thinking about it, do we really need to follow that? What are we doing? I don't want to have 10, 20 times more money than annual expenditure going to treasury bond, losing money. Thank you.
Right. So if I may, a couple of things here. If we can go back to slide 25. Here on slide 25, you see the summary again of the reserve specialist recommendation. I want to draw your eye here to the middle, right where it says percent funded 26.6. Right below that, it gives us their recommendation. The reserve specialist says, hey, if it were up to us, we recommend that your community actually contribute $14.5 million. That is not what we're putting before you today. In fact, we're doing the other one that says the alternate minimum. The alternate minimum is, hey, if you put in $12,950,000, then that'll keep you above a certain threshold here. And we don't go with what they recommend. We don't want to be ultra super conservative, because that would be an additional $33.60 per matter per month. That's not what we're saying here. We believe that there's a path forward without having to take such extremes. So yes, we aren't as ultra conservative as you would think. Also, if you go back one page, here on slide 24, I believe that Director Yoon's concern is, hey, we may be over contributing to the elevator or to the laundry. I'll remind everyone that we're really focused on that bottom line here. We are taking a look at the percent funding for total. Could we remove some of that money from elevator? Sure, but if you did so, I would definitely say put it into the replacement fund, right? You'd end up at exactly the same spot. Ultimately, we just didn't want to change it because the contributions to the elevator and the laundry fund have been standard for some time, so we're just taking all the increases and applying them over the replacement fund. Is that a hard and fast rule? No, but I think it's reasonable. So anyway, just wanted to explain as far as what our thinking is on these.
So, sounds like there's some work to do here, and David's going to help us lead it to gather some more information, share it with the board, and see where we come up with. All right?
Yeah. Yeah, Director Unit, I would also add, for the benefit of the community as well, by having your current reserve at 26% allows you to weather fluctuations in expenses in the upcoming years. Do you have to contribute as much as you do? No. But if you don't, then potentially in 2 years from now, your assessments can rise dramatically to offset any incoming legislation that comes through. Given the fact that you guys are at 26%, it gives you a strong base to continue going forward with year over year 5% increases, right? Absent the reserve, your contributions could vary wildly from year to year, which probably wouldn't be in the best interest of the community, but it's up to the board to decide.
I have a question. Is this mandatory maintenance for the reserve fund? Has to be mandatory?
Yes.
Under the what? Under the state law? or
So, can you go to slide 25? Maybe that's what he's talking about. Are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Is this,
I mean, do we have to have
46
30%, 26%? I
right,
think is kind of what
right.
he's
Is it
asking.
mandatory?
It's mandatory that you provide and disclose what percent funding you are. It's mandatory.
Based on what legislation? Is it state law, federal
Yes.
law? What?
Yeah, state law requires us to disclose your percentage. Are you required to be the 26? By no means.
Okay.
So, but disclosure is important.
So,
If-
some kind of fund available that satisfy the state law then? Am I correct?
So you're required to disclose from a 30-year plan perspective what you anticipate. Every year, this is not our plan, not our recommendation, but you could do a special assessment every year, not our recommendation, right? So, but by providing a certain baseline funding, this achieves the keeping your assessments stable or slow increase.
Okay.
Okay. David, do you have
Yeah.
something?
And the other aspect of it that comes in, we're all fiduciaries. Now, California fiduciary law gives us a fair amount of protection under what's called the business judgment rule. We're granted leeway to use our business judgment in determining what level we want to keep our reserves at. But if something were to go wrong, we could find ourselves in court facing liability for breach of fiduciary duty because someone has a credible claim that we went beyond the business judgment rule and we did something that a reasonable, prudent person wouldn't do. Now, if it ever came to that, if something went wrong and we're in the yellow, then we've got a pretty good position. But if we're going to go into the red and knowingly go into the red, we need to have a good foundation where we can say later, if necessary, that yes, this wasn't done lightly. We considered it. We had a financial analysis done. We did realize that it was going to take us into the red, but we're going to make enough money off this program to justify it. That puts us back within the business judgment rule. Okay? So as long as we are deliberate in making this decision, we're fine.
Okay.
Moon?
To the mutual, annual expenditure is about 30 million, right? Plus the GRF contribution, so we are spending about 30 million annually only for the mutual. So if we have reserve and digest fund included, more than 30 million is already 100% covered. But if we really want to have a deep pocket, okay, billionaire, we can have 100 million in our pocket. But to me, if you run any business, your annual expenditure is about 100. Then if you have $100, 100 in your pocket, that's a very, very fat position. Not many business does that. But we are looking for like 3-4 times over that $100. So we are super, super, super conservative.
So again,
I believe you're speaking specifically to the elevator fund, which is a small component of the total pie, right? So in 2025, all in, not including the offsetting revenues, your budgeted total expense is about $50 million, including operating. So with regards to just your budgeted reserves, you're planning on spending about $15.1 million. Your reserve is sitting somewhere in the neighborhood of 30, so you're not talking about multiple iterations of having money in the bank. But again, as I mentioned before, having that money in the bank avoids having huge fluctuations in the future.
sorry, your microphone, please.
Thank you. Okay. Reserve funding is 29 million. The last year, 2054, is one of the best position. Okay. Reserve funding is 29 million. Reserve expenditure is 27 million. Okay, when you look at year 2025, funding is about 13 million. We are expenditure about 15 million. Okay. And so when you look at what we spending 33rd Mutual is, as I said, I could be wrong, but the way I understand it, about 30 million we are spending for annually.
Sure.
I think that's a pretty good consumption, assumption.
Director Yuen, if I may. I just want to show you here on your screen. We talked about what's required by law. What's required by law is that we present this percent funding. And what is that percent funding? That percent funding is how much money you have divided by something that they call fully funded balance. And that actually in the statute describes how to calculate that number. And that basically says if you have a roof that costs $100, it's supposed to last 10 years. By the end of year 3, you're supposed to have $30 in the bank. That's basically how you calculate that. The reserve specialist has calculated that number and said that we should have in the bank $86 million. So getting back to are we overfunded? In theory, we're supposed to have $86 million. We have $23 million. And that's why we're concerned, and that's why we're not concerned. We believe that there's a plan in place to be able to be where we want to be, but I do not think that we're overfunded.
Yeah. My assumption of 30 million annual is not just the expenditure from reserve. It includes all expenditure to the mutual. That includes reserve, what we're spending from reserve as well. I think what we spend in reserve is less than 50%, or should be. If we budget properly, we should not spend any money from reserve at all if we do really good job. But sometimes, unexpected this or that. I was very surprised when I was sitting on this committee at first. Annually, they were using reserve fund, they were using digest fund. Reserve fund and the digest fund is when we really tight, you have to use that. But annually, we are using reserve fund, we are using digest fund. I couldn't understand, but now I've been sitting a little bit here, and maybe this is the norm of the mutual budget. Okay, so I want to think, not just the staff, but all of our board members, all of the people who are even resident. what is reserve fund? What is disaster fund? Why we make that? Why we, as David said, we don't want to have a special assessment and somebody gonna take us to court. Okay. That is a very good idea. We don't want to be harassed by the resident. We did a pretty poor job. But we really look at what the reserve, let me repeat again, reserve fund and the disaster fund for. We have to use those, not the regular operational annually. But we are using it. So we are doing poor job, to me. Not very good job. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments, questions? All right, I don't see any hands raised on Zoom. Go ahead, Jose. What slide are we on now?
We are on slide 32. We're going to start talking a little bit about restricted contributions. So unlike reserve contributions, which are required by David Sterling, restricted contributions are not required. These are your savings accounts, for lack of a better word. You do have two of them. So you do have the disaster fund and the unappropriated expenditures fund. You see that both of the contributions to each of these is actually projected to go down. So we'll take them one at a time. Here on your screen, you'll see the disaster fund. Historically, this fund has been in the neighborhood of $9 million and 6 and 5, what you've been seeing over the past little bit. Last year, we asked for a $25 per matter per month contribution. This year, we have decreased that to $13.69, the exact amount that was needed to get you to an exact 5% increase. So we believe that this is important for us to be able to have money in this fund just in case there's any issues. Again, the purpose of the disaster fund is to be used for the repair or replacement of mutual assets damaged by uninsured or unexpected disasters. So we also provide for certain insurance premiums. We've done that in the past. As I'm taking a look at some of what you have used it for, you've used it for insurance and for moisture intrusion and damage restoration. You've used it for landscape risk management, really some of the other items that weren't previously in your plan. Again, not required by David Sterling, but certainly good to have. If we contribute $13.69 per matter per month, we project that this fund will end 2025 in the $5.5 million range, which is where it has been. So that is our projection for this. And in the same breath here, I'll talk a little bit about the unappropriated expenditures fund. Historically, we've been contributing about $8 or $585,000 $585,000 per year. I will say that for 2024, at your most recent finance meeting, we talked about an operating surplus. In 2023, you ran an operating surplus of $531,000. We took a vote, and the committee voted to return this money to the unappropriated expenditures fund. With that contribution of $531,000, we feel it prudent that has taken care of the contribution for 2025. So we do anticipate and recommend no contribution for unappropriated expenditures fund. Again, this is an example. I know some of you were asking, hey, what's going to go on with that money? This is what we use that money for. That way we didn't have to take up a contribution here in this fund. So happy to take any questions on those two slides.
Yes, Ken?
Yes, 531 to 82. I thought that was you request to reserve, to transfer to reserve fund.
We request for transfer of the unappropriated expenditures fund.
I misunderstood that. Why don't we transfer that to reserve fund to increase the fund level? This one already has $5-6 million over.
So it's always an option. So you can, there's no rule that says you need to take surplus or deficit and place it in a certain account. So what we do though, for instance, the reason why we chose the unappropriated expenditure fund is if you were to have a year where you were in a deficit, we would go to this account.
Right.
We'd pull that deficit. So likewise, in years where there's a surplus, we return those monies. So we try to be consistent where the money is going. We would, if you had a deficit in your operating account, in your operating fund, we wouldn't pull from reserve.
Okay. So, is it possible that we can make a motion to transfer to a reserve fund rather than
Tomorrow, yes.
tomorrow? Okay.
Tomorrow the board will be discussing where to put that
Yes.
$531,000.
Right.
But-
Yes.
So yes.
I see that according to the agenda. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All right. Thank you, Jose. What's next?
All right. What's next is going to be on slide 36, and this is the projected balance of the Garden Villa Rec Room Fund. I will say that, again, we just got word from the committee that this is to be reduced to $6.50. That's going to, of course, have a downward effect on some of the ending balances here. So we will work with staff and make sure that not only are we going to update the contributions, but we're also going to update any projected expenditures here for the upcoming years. So this whole slide will change around, so I won't spend too much time other than say we will provide you something updated.
So you mentioned 2025 is going to remain at 650. Was there any feedback to you as to what to do, and was the plan for 2026?
There was not.
So when you update the slide, how are you going to update it?
We're gonna,
You going to keep the 650 for a while, or until we start running out of money?
my intention is to go up 50 cents per year. However, before I can really say, I want to get with maintenance and construction and find out what the planned expenditures are specifically. Are they going to be doing floors? Are they going to be doing countertops? What are they going to be doing? And once we have a plan as far as the expenditures are concerned, we can offset that with what we need for revenue.
Okay.
If I may, my plan is based on the life expectancy of all the component part. And I request the staff to increase, if it's possible, the life expenses, expectancy of the component part, and also each individual part that we need to replace it, to make sure we have to replace it. Otherwise, we'll expend it that, so that we don't waste money. That's my plan, to do that.
So rather than just replace because the plan says replace, you want to make sure
Yes,
that we're
that's
replacing
exactly
it only
right.
when it needs to be replaced.
Right, so we'll inspect before replace it.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
All right. Well, that leads us to the end here. Again, just want to finish up where we started, letting you know that, again, all in all, we've talked about all the different aspects of the plan. The third basic assessment is set to increase $29.38 combined with GRF for a total of $39.35. And again, I want to begin where we ended, end where we began, and remind you that we've talked about a lot of things today, but at the end of the day, the 6 items on your screen account for 87% of your total increase. And again, that was the removal of the damage restoration backlog. That was one-time revenue that we only had in '24, or sorry, not revenue, but reimbursement. Reserve fund contributions increased $13.86. We also added 2 cycles of shrub bed for a cost of $700,000. Utilities are something we wish we could control but can't. Water and trash primarily there at $8.24. And then we reduced the contributions to those disaster and unappropriated expenditures fund to match the 5% total increase. Again, that's 87% of your total expenses are explained by that. And I keep saying, and lastly, but this is really my last slide here, letting you know that there was also some talk that we had been hearing as far as increasing funding to the operating budget to fund licensed quality control inspectors with expertise in plumbing and electrical and roofing. We anticipate that that would cost about $158,000, $2.16 per matter per month. If you were to do this, our recommendation would be to decrease your contribution to the disaster fund by the same amount. No total change to your budget, but it's going to be a question of if you do this, we would recommend a smaller increase to the disaster fund, or a bigger decrease, I think it is. So let you guys decide that and then give us some direction there.
Okay.
And
We can do that. All right. And you're now, any final questions? I think we have a presentation coming up. We'd asked Manuel and his team to give us a presentation on kind of how we got where we are with waistline relining and versus cleaning and that kind of thing. Any questions of finance staff before we have?
Yes, I do have a question regarding the increased funding to the operating budget by $158,000 solely for inspectors. Am I correct?
Yes.
Is it already figured into our budget?
That is not.
No, okay, so we still have a time to discuss, or yet, you
Yes.
say yay or nay, right?
Correct.
Am I correct? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we have a few outstanding items. This will be one of them. The prior to paint will be one of them. And that prior to paint being the size that it is may cause other discussions of other reserve spending that we may or may not want to do. Okay, all right. Excellent. David?
I'd like to thank the financial staff for all the work you guys have put into this. I think we're in pretty good shape.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agreed. All right, and with that, you can move on to the next slide, I guess. Nope, that's the end of yours. Okay, we had something more in our packet, that was all. I thought it may have been in there.
Yeah, I believe we'll be pulling that up just now.
Okay,
We do.
fantastic, thanks. Thanks, staff, for hanging with us, being ready to answer questions.
Good afternoon, members of the board. As President Laws indicated, we were asked to provide you with some information on the history of the epoxy lining program. We went back and researched files and records on the epoxy lining program. Unfortunately, we were not very successful in finding documentation as to what discussions or decisions were made or the rationale for when the program started back in 2015, 2016. That's when the discussion started in 2015. In 2016, the decisions were made to start the epoxy lining program. I would venture to guess that discussions probably started even before that, 2013, 2014. But what we did do and are able to do is provide you today with a presentation on what we're doing today. And we think we have enough information here that the board can then determine how you want to continue or discontinue with the epoxy lining program. Again, because we don't have documentation from years back, I would imagine that the information the board at that time received was something similar to what we're going to share with you today. So I know I'm preaching to the choir on the history of this, but for those residents that might be listening at home, epoxy lining is a preventive maintenance program. It's intended to prevent potential plumbing stoppages and water leaks. So when the board was discussing earlier in your discussions about what are we doing preventively, this is an excellent example of something that the board has traditionally, over the last few years, invested in a preventive maintenance program with the intent of minimizing the chances of plumbing stoppages and water pipe leaks that potentially then could result in expensive repairs to mutual properties. But just the lining on itself is not sufficient to get us to where we want to be. We combine that with an educational program where we periodically remind members through newsletters, through letters, through announcements that epoxy lining on its own doesn't solve the problem. Residents need to be vigilant and reduce the amount of
Inappropriate?
food grease in kitchen sinks, down to garbage disposal. Although it's a very convenient way of disposing of your food grease, it does nothing to help keep the pipes clean and clog-free. And then these disposable wipes that are advertised are also not as decomposable as they claim to be. And a lot of times when our plumbing crews go out to unclog a waste line, it very frequently results as a result of a big accumulation of these disposable wipes. So education combined with a preventive maintenance program is probably the best way to try to ensure that you have a clog-free waistline program in your manners. So approximately 20% of the buildings in Third have received at least a partial epoxy lining. And I say partial, and Mr. Barnett, when he does his presentation, will share with you why not all buildings have been fully lined, but 20% of the buildings have now received at least a partial epoxy lining. Over the last 4 years, our focus has been on 3-story buildings where you have your 21 or 24 manners. Those tend to be the buildings where if you have a problem on the 3rd floor, it's going to be an issue not only for that unit, but also units below it. So the focus has been on the 3-story buildings. The board approved a $1 million budget allocation in 2023. You also approved a $1.5 million budget allocation in 2024. That was quite a bit more than what the previous boards have approved. My recollection of the discussions during the board meetings was you wanted to be more aggressive in trying to address this preventive maintenance program. So in 2023 and 2024, the program completed fully epoxy lining 14 3-story buildings. So that represents 321 manners that now have epoxy lined waistlines, that if we combine that with good personal use of what goes down the drain, should be zero problems in the foreseeable future. You're going to hear Mr. Barnett say that we have almost no calls for service on buildings where we have done epoxy lining. And on the ones where we do get a call for service, it's because somebody has put something down the toilet or down the sink that should not have gone in there, and we're able to get that out. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Barnett to walk you through the programs. He's going to talk primarily about epoxy lining for the waste lines, which is your sewer lines, but as the board knows, we also do epoxy lining of the copper water lines. So I'll turn it over to Ian, and then I'll be around for questions.
Wait, Manuel,
I have a question. Those lines that we did epoxy lining, that we said that now they're disaster-free, are they the same type that if people kept it clean, we really didn't need to do epoxy lining? What we're saying that we do epoxy lining, people don't put anything in there. If people didn't put, unacceptable material in there, did we still need to do the epoxy lining? Under what circumstances we do epoxy lining?
Well, Mr. Barnett will cover that in his presentation, but I'll just remind the board, your infrastructure is 50, 60 years old. So even if somebody never put anything that they shouldn't have down the drain, those pipes are going to deteriorate just by time. And so epoxy lining is one way of addressing that issue. Mr. Barnett will cover some of the other options that you have available should you choose to.
But these are cast iron, right? These are
Correct.
cast iron pipe?
Correct.
Emmanuel, let me say. So it's a cast iron is only first floor and the garage, right? Second, third floor is not cast iron. So we are doing only first floor and the garage one. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, Mr. Barnett's going to cover that in his
Okay.
presentation.
Wait, no, just teasing. Just teasing, Manuel. Ian, come.
Mark,
to tell-
before Mr. Barnett, I've got a question for Siobhan. I note that we had problems finding documentation on the inception of the program. Was that due to records retention policy, or, and I guess what I'm asking, does our record retention policy provide that we keep records until a major program like this is completed and don't dispose of them after 7 years?
I'll have to look at our new policy. We adopted one in about 2018 that we adhere to now. I can't speak to anything that happened before then.
Yeah, I get it.
That's the challenge.
I get it.
But I'll get back to you with the specifics.
And just to be clear on what I meant, We have documentation of when the previous boards approved this project and
Yeah.
started the program.
Yeah.
What we don't have documentation is what was the rationale, what was their thinking?
Right.
That's not documented in any meeting minutes. We don't have any videos of those meetings. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, staff reports from agenda packages, all that stuff.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. We'll go ahead and jump into this. So I'm here to talk to you about the epoxy lining program. We're going to go through both the waistline program and also the copper line program. So I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. So let's jump in. So the waistline treatment options that you have are going to be your preventive line cleaning, your traditional replacement, your epoxy lining with traditional replacement where it's appropriate. Just to talk a little bit more about that one there, because that sometimes gets a little bit of a rise out of people. You're doing the epoxy lining, but you're still replacing these pipes. And that's because some pipes are beyond the capability of lining. We can line up to about 60% of missing pipes. So as long as there's about 40 to 45% of that pipe left, we can line it. And then there's the respond only to the reported stoppages. And that one is absolutely reactive and not having any proactive care for the infrastructure is not recommended at all. Just a little bit of history here also under the preventive line cleaning. Before this program started, there was a mainline cleanout program. And that mainline cleanout program was replaced by the epoxy lining program. When the epoxy lining program first came, it was in 2011, and that was for the main lines only. So that was taking care of your large 4 and 6 inch main lines that are outside of the buildings, and those were seeing a lot of breakdown, a lot of problems with root intrusions, and those were causing a lot of problems, but it was also spending a lot of money on that cycle of cleaning them. So it was replaced with the epoxy lining program.
Do you have any idea when you say a lot of money? I mean, because that's kind of why one of the reasons we're spending a lot of money now on the epoxy lining versus the preventive cleaning. Can we clean 80 buildings, 83-story buildings for the amount of money that we're relining 10? That kind of thing. I think that's kind of what we're interested in understanding.
Of course, and as we get through the program, you're going to see some, you'll see some slides discussing the pros and cons.
Okay.
So here we have, on the next slide, the preventive cleaning. And you can see that basic cleaning will remove debris only. And when I talk about basic cleaning, I'm talking about the average plumber coming in with just their regular auger that will open up the pipe a little bit. But those don't open up the pipes all the way. Right? Those don't remove the scale buildup or any hard buildup that's inside of those pipes. They're going to get rid of some of that sludge and a little bit of the loose scale buildup. Advanced cleaning will descale, but may compromise the pipe walls. Now, the advanced cleaning is done with either a hydrojet, where they're shooting highly compressed water through those pipes, or with what's called a picote machine. Now, the picote machine you'll also sometimes hear regarded as the chains. And these are literally chains with saw teeth on the end of them that are the same diameter, or slightly bigger than the inside diameter of the pipe. And the purpose of that is to literally grind off anything and everything on the inside of those pipes and leave a smooth finish once they're done. Again, both of those are really destructive to the pipes, and in an old community like this, can cause more problems than it does good. We quite often run into our contractors that we call in to clean a pipe will hit a spot in a pipe and it breaks it, and then we either have to dig that pipe up and replace it, or we have to do spot lining where we go in and we'll run 10 to 15 feet of liner inside of a pipe. Now, You heard Mr. Gomez mention that there are some buildings that received partial lining. These are going to be those buildings in those places where they received just a little bit of liner, 15, 20 feet, maybe a little bit more, as a spot repair and not done on the program. They're done off program by a different vendor. And again, frequent cleaning promotes pipe collapse. The mainline program was switched out for this because there were some problems many, many years ago. I know that a lot of the talk is, well, what does that cost us, right? Is there a cost that you can show us? And I discussed with finance about getting some of those costs, but now correct me if I'm wrong, Jose, prior to the switch from, or at the switch from PCM to VMS, I believe before then we have overall numbers, but we don't have detailed numbers. Am I correct saying that?
Yeah, it had to do with when we entered into the system that we're using now.
Yeah, so it's difficult for me to come back and say, hey, you know, in 2010 you spent this much on your mainline cleanouts. It's difficult to say. But we do have current numbers, and I can tell you at a different time what it costs to do the cleaning, because we have cleaned some buildings.
Are we talking even the basic cleaning we don't have a cost for?
The
Like this
basic cleaning, just
remove-
to remove those
Yeah.
debris, that's going to be just our normal plumbers coming out. So we have the numbers for all of this stuff here. I can provide those to you. Not today, but I have them.
Understand.
I can pull those.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's why I asked the question. I saw on the other slides you have some prices, but on this, but this preventive cleaning slide, you didn't. So,
Right.
you know, again, a question I think we've kind of asked. If you do a basic cleaning, to 100 buildings twice a year, how much would that cost? And what would it do? You know, if you
Sure.
did a basic cleaning that often, would it work for, and education? And well, would it, solve many of the problems? That's, we're trying to solve the problems for our members somehow, and doing, 4 buildings, 6 buildings a year isn't quite cutting it.
Yeah, so the basic cleaning's not going to do that.
Okay.
And that's why you have a lot of calls back to buildings while we're waiting for the programs to come around, because those basic cleanings only clear up a little bit of that pipe. It only opens it up. So a pipe that's 10% open now becomes 20% open and closes back up within a few months.
Okay.
And so that's the problem there. It's the repeat. So you need to do the advanced cleaning.
Okay.
But again, doing the advanced cleaning, you're sure you're going to,
Deteriorate the pipes is what
exactly,
we're hearing.
and runs the risk of breaking the pipe in that moment and not having the having to get a contractor to come in and now rebuild what's been broken. Slide.
Okay. Again, we're hearing that it might, probably, so, again, I'll leave this for the board to talk about. Is there, maybe we'll want to do a pilot program where we take some set of buildings and do some cleaning, more advanced cleaning, or, just to get a feel for what's going on, while we're spending money on the epoxy lining, maybe we can do some cleaning for the other ones, that type of thing. So we'll have to,
Sure.
we're do you guys have any recommendations, or is it just, the epoxy lining is, your best cost?
And we'll talk a little bit more about that here as
Okay.
well.
Thanks.
So under the waistline replacements, the replacement costs are generally 65% greater than epoxy lining. So the cost to replace underground pipes in a 4-unit building is about $90,000, and the cost to epoxy line the same building is $31,000. Now, that $90,000 to replace the pipes gives you brand new pipes, and you're good for another 50, 60 years. And the cost To do the lining is 31,000, and you're good for, 60 to 75 years is what is stated for the lifespan of epoxy pipes. Now, thank you.
Just a second, let me finish the slide and then you can jump in before he goes to the next slide.
And so doing this, it also presents an inconvenience to the people in the building when we do traditional replacements. We have to pull flooring, we have to get air clearances. For a major repipe, it's going to displace the residents during that time. So there's a lot of considerations when looking at doing traditional replacements. And when you get into those advanced cleanings, you're going to see more and more of these replacements needing to happen because more and more of those pipes are going to break.
Moon, you had some?
I have 3 questions. One is, I have 3 questions. One is, you earlier said so far when we did whatever we done so far was 60% we have to replace the traditional pipe. Is that 60%, correct? You know, we do epoxy and
yes.
cleaning. Some percentage we have to replace whole pipe, right? What
Correct.
percentage? Yeah.
If more than 60% of the pipe is missing,
Yeah, you told me.
you have to
You said that 60%, right? That's more than half, right?
Correct.
So we need to replace whole thing, right?
correct.
Second question is when just the slide we had cast iron is about the 50 to 60 years lifespan, and then epoxy is a 75% or 75 years lifespan. That means from 0 to 50 to 60 years of cast iron. Then if we replace the epoxy, is that from that point another 75 years or only 15 years more?
No. So if we replaced a pipe with epoxy or put epoxy in a pipe today, it would be 75 years.
Another
from today.
75 years, right?
Correct.
And then third one, I asked Emmanuel earlier, is that only first floor and garage floor involved or second, third floor involved? I understand the second and third floor is not cast iron.
That is correct. Your second and third floor are ABS.
So not involved in this project?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does epoxy line, I heard that maybe epoxy line doesn't work if there's an L in the pipe or something like that. That's just some urban legend rumor I've heard. Can you dispel that for me?
I can. So yes, epoxy lining will take a 45 bend, it will take a 90 bend. The only 90 bends, 90-degree corners that you'll see here are not hard corners. They're soft, rounded 90 degrees, and we can absolutely line those. And the only ones you'll see in the community are where the pipe goes from vertical to horizontal. There's no 90-degree turns in the pipes that are underground or in a garage. You're looking at 45 degrees, or you're looking at what are called Y connections, W-Y-E, and those are where multiple pipes come together.
Okay.
Now, where the multiple pipes come together in those Ys, that's where you're going to see the connections cannot be lined, because then you're going to line over one side, and now you have to try and reinstate that pipe with a machine that doesn't always reinstate perfectly, and you run into more problems than you would if you just left that particular fitting alone.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
I think Jim has his.
Even Y lines, you cannot epoxy line, right?
That's correct.
That's correct. Now, you're talking about I'm focusing on 3-story building, which I live. That the waistline is, we can see it, right? That is different than you're digging in the ground,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
So That is where my argument is coming. That why don't we replace the whole thing with a PVC line or something else instead of epoxy line? That's where most people's complaining about is coming from.
Even replacing those pipes is going to cost, it's going to cost money to replace those pipes. And most of those,
Right,
those pipes on the
but
program,
not,
most of those pipes on that program, if they are in bad condition, they do get replaced with a pre-lined pipe.
right, one building, as I recall, is about $350,000.
No, that's a gigantic cost. There's,
Yeah.
one building is not that
Either
much.
350 or 150, I can't remember
It's
exactly.
yeah, it's 150.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
it's between 150 and 175,000 dollars to line a 3-story building.
Right. So let's say just a pipe replacement of the sewer line on a 3-story building. Does it take that much money to do that?
You're still looking at more cost than the lining. To put a pipe in costs more money because the pipe costs more money.
Okay, I think we need to study on that one. We need to
We have all of that information. And it's in the contract too, I believe, that you can review.
Yeah. We'll do Jim and then Moon. Jim?
Yeah, on the $90,000 cost to replace underground pipes, does that include replacing all the concrete, wrapping the pipes and everything? Or is that just to the point we're looking at in this photo?
That is the project from start to finish. That's the excavations, the replacement of the pipes, the replacement of the excavations, the putback, all of the stuff that the mutual would be responsible for.
Okay, under that same line, along with SK's comments about the underground and the 3-story buildings, the one in the garage, if we have to replace pipes in there, we don't have to go through all the digging, everything else. And you say we replace those pipes with line pipes. Are those line cast iron pipes? And is there any way we could change that out and use the PVC pipes in place of the cast iron pipes in the garages? And would that be cheaper?
That's a great question, and I'll have to look into that to see if you could put ABS in that area. But I believe any replacements for pipes like that have to go back in as the cast iron. But I will verify that for you.
And again, I'm saying PVC, not ABS, because in a lot of other states, they use PVC, which is a stronger pipe than the ABS is.
Right.
Okay, good, thanks. So we had some information coming. Moon?
Yes, so the first floor and the garage is above ground, right? So you don't, if there's any problem, you don't have to dig into ground. But anything from that and the main line, going into main line, is under the ground. So we are in the program checking from the main line all the way to first floor.
That is correct. The lining goes all the way out to the community main.
To the first floor. Second question is, whatever we have done so far, what percentage we have a problem underground main line?
Where you've put in epoxy, you don't have any problems.
No, before, so there must be some problem in main line or that. We have to put the epoxy in, or as you digging it right now, cut the cement and all that. You have to replace it, right? So what I'm saying is, what percentage we have to replace it so far, our experience?
So if I'm understanding your question, you're asking how many problems we had before putting the epoxy in?
No,
Or after putting the epoxy?
before.
Before
So
putting the
far,
epoxy.
so
In a building, typically, how much of that building has to be replaced anyway because the pipe's too material?
every building is different on how much we have to traditionally replace.
No, yeah,
Yeah,
okay. How many buildings so far we done? 40-some buildings so far we have done, right? Correct?
well, we've done a lot more than that, but.
How many
for
we done so
three-
far?
For three-story buildings,
Uh-huh.
we've done approximately 23, I think, off the top of
23.
my head.
Among 23, how many you have to digging out this way, the cement, cut cement?
None.
How many?
Yet we haven't had to go into any of the Garden Villa garages, into the floor of any of those garages.
How many?
0,
0.
yes.
So you were
in
able
the
to do
three-story,
Oh, go
in the
ahead.
three-story garden villas. In the other type of three-story buildings that don't have a garage, the LH21 buildings,
Mm-hmm.
those ones we've had to do quite a bit of excavation.
They have a more problem then.
That is
Okay.
correct.
So how many you have to do epoxy and to mainline and all that? How many of them? So you said the garden villa is 0, right?
For the garden
And
villas, we
then
have not had to excavate. For
Building
the
LH21, you have to do much more problem.
When we go to those ones to put epoxy in, there are more spots that we have to do excavations. And I would say you're probably looking somewhere in the area of about maybe 5%.
5%.
Yeah, it's a very small amount that we have to excavate and replace in those buildings,
In
Okay.
LH21 building,
in the LH21s.
you have to dig 4 locations.
That's just to get the lining.
LH21,
That's to get the lining in, not to replace pipe.
I understand.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is you have to dig in 4 locations
Mm-hmm.
to clean up the sewer lines.
Mm-hmm.
And then you epoxy line those.
That's correct.
So
Those are
to me,
on the outside of the
the
building.
digging of those is not quite a bit. It's just small section of it.
Right. Those are on the,
So
that's on the
it's
outside
not
of the
that
building.
big a deal. To me, it's not.
Right, that's on the outside of the building.
Right. I understand that.
Yeah, so traditional replacements in those buildings are very, very small.
Right.
Of traditional
So whether
replacements.
it's a LH21 or a Garden Villa building,
Mm-hmm.
the digging of the 4 locations for the LH21 is not that much extra excavation you need. It's similar to, it's easier with the the Garden Villa building because it's exposed to the garage.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Garden Villa, you have openings on many areas, so all you need is to open up the valve, and then you can clean up the whole sewer lines. So what I'm saying is, the LH21, you need to dig in 4 locations, but it's not that much. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I think you and Moon are talking different things, but that's fine. Okay, Reza.
You said something I'm interested in. What technology you use to see if 40% or less of the pipe is remaining? What technology you use?
We camera every line.
With the camera, you can say the thickness of you measure the thickness?
No, when I say the pipe is missing, I mean it's
No,
completely
I'm
gone
talking
and-
about,
and
you
there's
said
dirt.
about if the pipe have 40% or less left, you suggest that we do something with it. I'm wondering how you measure the thickness of the pipe that's left in the ground.
Let me clarify, when I say 40%, I'm talking about completely missing pipe.
Oh,
not the
I thought you were
thickness.
talking about thickness.
No.
So we don't know the thickness of the pipe, if the pipe is intact or not.
It's-
Because that's the key to the whole thing.
Correct. If there's a pipe there, it doesn't matter what the thickness is when we put the lining in.
I know.
Yeah.
Then, that's waste of lining. Because if the 100% thickness is there, why are you putting the lining in there? That's my concern, because I saw that you guys sent some, camera down the, piping, and you look at the pipe and all of that, if there is a crack. Because the lining, if you go back to the first photo that you put up, the lining doesn't take care of the cracked pipe or movement of the earth that causes the pipe crack, or the intrusion of the trees into the pipe that breaks the pipe. Epoxy lining doesn't take care of any of those. Epoxy lining is when you have weak thickness of the pipe, you put epoxy lining in there in order to strengthen the life of the pipe. But if the pipe broken or cracked or have all of those things in it, epoxy doesn't help. I'm a chemist, so I made epoxy myself, so I know how it works. I thought you said that you guys measure the thickness before you put the epoxy in it. If I know the thickness is there, why I'm putting epoxy? Why the pipe that is good? Why I'm putting epoxy line in there?
There's no way to measure the thickness of an
I
underground
know, that's
pipe.
exactly what I'm asking the question.
And just to also clarify, the epoxy lining does keep the roots from coming in. It absolutely stops all of that.
It's
from
collapse.
happening.
If it collapses the pipe, it collapses the lining too. It doesn't matter, because if the root goes into the pipe, it collapses the lining too. So the pressure going to collapse everything, because the epoxy lining is actually softer than the pipe itself, the cast iron. So if you go into the cast iron, you're going to collapse the. So my point is that we need to come up with a better way to approach this, because this is a lot of time and a lot of money. We just don't want to do it hastily and say, okay, we're going to do epoxy lining all these building, all those building. I'd rather do epoxy lining when it's worth doing epoxy lining rather than just doing it because it's good. And I don't agree that if you have a 60 years old pipe, you put another epoxy in there, which only 10% of the thickness is left, you have another 75 years of life of that pipe. That's no way it's going to happen, because that pipe's going to collapse, and with that, the epoxy going to collapse. So we need a little bit better approach to this rather than, we're going to do it because it's a good thing to do. Maybe just in some of the areas, a simple cleaning. These pipes, in my knowledge, the little knowledge that I have, I'm not expert, cast irons is made for the industrial use. We are not industrial. We don't have pH of 2 or pH of 10 in our line. I hope not, unless somebody is putting acid down there. So they last much longer than the industrial setting. And for that, the only time that we really need to look at these pipes is when they're broken, they're cracked, or there is earth movement, which happened in the 3-story building, the possibility of earth movement that breaks the pipe. At that time, I don't think lining's going to help with those. Lining only, you have to remove the pipe and put new pipes in there. Maybe at that time you put lining in there in order to make it, I don't know. I don't know what kind of help we get with that. Because, when you said the intrusion by the tree is going to be prevented by epoxy lining, I don't think that's going to happen. Because if the intrusion into the pipe, if cast iron is broken, epoxy is gone. So we need a little bit better approach to this before we spend tons of money on just epoxy lining everything for the sake of epoxy lining. That's my point. Thank you.
So I'd also like to mention that the epoxy and the liner that are used have to meet strict ASTM standards. And I can send those over to you guys, because those take on the same standards that the pipes have to adhere to as well when going into for the sewer lines. And so the ASTM talks about the thickness, the strength, the compression strength. It has all of that stuff that it has to meet. Now, sure.
That's epoxy lining, a friend of mine does all the time.
Sure, absolutely. And again, all of this stuff has to meet specific ASTM standards before it is signed off for use.
Okay. I still have
We've
questions.
not seen any problems when it relates to the epoxy collapsing, where the pipes were collapsing. We're not having any of those problems.
I'm going to hold you. I'm going to just let him finish his presentation. We're kind of interrupting it. He may be answering some of our questions, and then we can have this discussion. He doesn't have that many slides more to go. Sorry, I started some of that, so I apologize.
No, that's perfectly fine. So a little bit of the history again. The original epoxy lining scope was for the exterior main lines from 2011 to 2016. And when we talk about the exterior main lines, those are your main lines that are running in your cul-de-sacs and in between your major buildings. Any interior pipe work needed for in-wall and below slab lines was done as a spot replacement. Replacements require excavation, remediation of drywall, flooring, and concrete. And excavations are a major disruption to the residents and costly to the mutual, which I hit on a little bit before this as well. In 2017, the epoxy lining scope was expanded to include the interior main lines along with the exterior main lines. And when we talk about interior main lines, those are the main lines that run under a building that take care of all of the manners in that building. And then later in 2019, it was, again, the scope was expanded to include the major lateral lines, which those major lateral lines are going to be all of the branch lines coming from the units into those main lines. Here's a little bit of the epoxy lining process. As you can see here, I kind of described about the chains that are a specific diameter to clean the inside of that pipe. That's what you're looking at here. Of course, this machine is slightly different to where it's not made of chains, but it's made of a solid medium. But that goes through, that cleans it up, that makes sure that it's nice and clean, but also leaves a little bit of a groove in the pipe to allow the epoxy to adhere better to that pipe when it's installed. The installation next to that, you can see that a bladder is inserted into the pipe and it's pulled all the way through the pipe and then it's inflated. And you can see here in that last picture where the pipe is restored with that epoxy lining and it's gapping over some of those cracks and missing parts of the pipe. Of course, this picture is just an artist concept, if you will, but we have had pipes that are, in pretty bad shape that have been lined before. So. The epoxy program also takes care of replacing fittings where needed, where lining can't occur. This would be one of those fittings that I kind of described a little while ago. And fittings and pipes found with advanced deterioration do not receive epoxy lining. These cases require excavation and replacement, and the fittings are replaced with ABS material. And so these specific fittings here, we are replacing because you can't put the epoxy lining inside of a pipe that has multiple connections coming through. Inevitably, you're going to run into a blockage with large backups. And then pipes are replaced with pre-lined cast iron. And then moving on to the copper waterline epoxy process, this coats the inside of the pipe, sealing all the pinholes up. It blocks corrosive elements in the water and creates, creating a new pipe within the existing pipe. This works a lot similar to the epoxy process. However, it's installed differently. We can't put a machine through to clean the inside of those pipes. So this process runs a little bit differently, where you can see number one here, your pipes are heated and dried. And then later the pipes are cleaned. And the cleaning is done with an abrasive element that is basically like a sand blasting that runs through the pipes. And then after that, the pipe has a pressurized air blown through it with the epoxy mixed in with it, and it vortexes through and leaving a coating on the inside of the pipe. You can see that this does have a little bit of a process that happens where you're going to have a lot of equipment in the homes, and these are done by connections. And so every connection at your bathtub shower, at your toilet, at your basins, your sinks, all of those connections, we have to pop those off and put the machine on and run the machines that way. The average cost to replace copper pipes in a home is roughly $9,000, and the average cost to add epoxy lining to copper is $4,000. These numbers are taken from a standard two-bath home, so it has 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, and a water heater, all of that kind of stuff. So, and I'm happy to take any questions now.
Okay.
Any more questions?
I think Moon?
The last slide, the copper water pipe, when 9,000 and 4,000, that means the whole copper line in that building, $4,000 for epoxy, or a certain area you are doing it?
That's for a 2-bathroom unit.
I mean the whole copper line in that building?
Just a unit, not a building. Just,
No, I mean
just
that
one manor.
unit, that unit.
Yeah, just that manor. That's all.
That
the
manor, whole copper line, right?
copper, all the copper.
Whole copper line.
And that $9,000 includes the abatement of the drywall,
Yeah.
abatement of any concrete that's needed, and the replacement of all that, the build back of all of that.
Okay. Second question is, what is the current, okay, let me rephrase it. The underground, main line and all that, is that all of them are cast iron or something else?
For the waistlines,
Uh-huh.
all of your underground pipes are cast iron until you get to a certain point, and they turn into clay.
Okay. Then what is the current building code? Still is cast iron? Year 2024 building code?
It depends. There's different codes for different things. I don't have the codes in front of me right now, but some areas you are allowed, in some instances, to put ABS, just not all instances.
So if we are building new buildings pretty similar, are we gonna be cast iron or the ABS in this area?
We'd have to look at the building codes. I don't have that in front of me.
You don't have answer. We have.
I don't have the building codes in front of me.
Okay, you don't. Okay. Then when you look at the waistline epoxy process, you grinding all that. Do we do first, before that, we put the scope in it, find out, or we just grinding it first?
No, we camera 3 times for each,
We do
for
camera,
each
right.
pipe. We camera before anything happens to see the condition of the pipe before it's cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
Then we camera after the cleaning to make sure that all of the pipe is there, or enough of the pipe is there to be able to put liner in.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the work is all done and completed, we run another camera to check the quality of the work to make sure that it's done properly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Kay?
Yeah. You said cracks, missing part, and the root cause. How many instances do we have so far, based on your experience with the epoxy lining? How many instances do you have?
That we need to replace traditionally replaced pipe?
Crack, missing part, or root cause, the pipe collapsing. How many instances you have found out of LH21 and Garden Villa buildings? How many times you found?
Well, not too many in the garden villas because
Right.
we can typically see that.
Right, did you see any
Right
root cause of pipe collapsing? Have you seen it?
Are you talking about tree roots
Our-
coming in?
Yeah,
Not in the
I
garden
don't think
villas,
so.
it's rare.
Yeah, very rare.
Yeah.
It's just talking. So, my question is, what if we use this traditional replacement treating, like a $9,000 for a home and $4,000 epoxy lining to copper line is $4,000. What if we apply that to sewer line after cleaning? You don't understand my question?
Are you talking about
Sewer line,
Waste line.
the waste line, what
Uh-huh.
if we apply this copper lining process for epoxy lining to copper process for our sewer line.
To spray in the epoxy?
Right. Uh-huh.
I don't believe that's going to work well in those pipes.
Why not?
Because you have to be able to close the pipes off and seal them off, and there's too many vents. Plumbing, waste lines, any kind of sewage pipe or waste pipes have to have vent lines so that you don't run into any siphon problems.
You have, every home, you have openings for major sewer line.
Uh-huh.
And you have Garden Villa Association building, you have openings as well. You connected that, then you can connect, you can spray on it.
But all of those pipes also have vent lines connected to them that go up to the
Absolutely.
top of the building.
So you
They
can,
have to
you
be
can,
vented.
you can apply the 4,000 PSI epoxy lining spray onto it. I see that.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway.
You're not going to find that.
Right,
There's
okay,
no vendor
anyway.
anywhere that's
So,
gonna do that.
you didn't see that many cracks on the pipe. I saw the camera goes, take a picture of the pipe, whether it's clean or not. So, missing part, I don't think you missed, you found any of those. And root cause of that for those buildings, I don't think so. And the cracks, very rarely.
Cracks we find all the time.
All the time?
Yeah,
I like to see the.
All the time. But for
They
pipes that are,
they have a record of all the pipe inspected before they do epoxy lining. So if there is, I'd like to see that.
sure.
Yeah.
That's not a
Okay, I'd
problem.
like to see that. And also, when they put epoxy line on the waste line, they did not dry the inside of pipe. They just do it with a 20 PSI balloon, and to me, it would not stick to the cast iron line at all. It's only 20 pound PSI.
Okay.
See?
It
So-
seems to work.
If it's clean, Roto-Rooter
Okay.
company comes out and clean the whole pipe, it may work the same way.
So you're suggesting that we may not need to do epoxy lining? Is that what you're getting?
That's my argument.
Okay, got it. How many buildings were planned to be done in 2024, epoxy line, waste line?
7,
7? 1.5 million?
1.5 million.
Okay, and so that's closer to 200,000 each? Because I heard earlier 100,000.
Yeah, with the new contract that came through.
Okay.
That had the price increase. I was referencing the prior contract. I
Okay.
apologize.
Okay, not a problem, just trying to.
I thought only 2 we allowed.
We have to let them
5?
compete.
7, so it sounds like 7 are planned, even with the updated contract?
Yeah, the first numbers were, for the 1.5, I believe we had 9 buildings
Okay.
originally planned. We had to remove 2 of those.
I thought we canceled the whole contract.
No, I think we're finishing what we've got. We did accept the increase, but put out to bid, we didn't go anything past this year, I think.
Okay.
Correct. We have an RFP that is either already gone out or is going out this week.
Okay, all right. So- Yes, Moon?
Emmanuel, Ian, but if we go for the epoxy, right now we have only one contract, right? One contract doing all the jobs. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was done on a competitive bidding process, and so
Yeah,
multiple
but we have
companies
only
bid, and
one
you guys-
contract.
Yeah, we choose one contractor to do the
Yeah.
work, yes.
Well, whatever they went through, can we have about 3, 4 contracts at the same time? Because we have so many buildings. If we do about 3, 4 buildings a year, it's gonna take another 20 years. So if we have a 4, 5 contract, it will be much shortened. Let's say hopefully within 5 years we get it all done.
If we have the money. So it's a money thing.
If we have money.
It's money, it's a money thing,
Yeah, I understand.
but.
Money
yeah.
is a different issue, but what I'm saying is, Can you do that?
So the contractor that you guys currently.
We have
use, they
only
put-
one
But there
contractor.
are multiple contractors that we could contract with, is what he's asking. Is that correct?
You could, but they're all going to be a much larger cost than this one. and this
Understand,
one can
understand.
handle
That's not
whatever
what
you
he's
need.
asking.
Yeah.
He's assuming we've got the money, so,
Sure.
yeah, so the one
Yeah.
contractor. we
I
work with was
understand
much-
money issue is, right? Every year, the cost gonna go up. Okay, inflation, all that. If we do that, even if it costs us, if we do it within 4 or 5 years, it may save us in the long run.
It may.
We don't know how we're gonna come up with that money. That's a different issue.
Right.
Maybe treasurer have to come up with that. But it will save it. I can see that 2 points. One is it can save it in long run, and then it save the time. Instead of 20 years, we can do that for
You bet,
5
you bet.
years.
Yeah, and so I think one of the things he was talking about contractors, the contractor we have is, 30% cheaper than the next contractor? So we can get 2 contractors, but the second contractor is way more expensive. And thus the first contractor will say, well, hey, and then everybody gets more expensive.
Yeah.
That is just why we're where we are today.
Mark,
We can.
so
we go out.
President, they are always monopoly and competition. If we have anything possible, we have to make competitive, okay? Monopoly, even Rockefeller got killed. Right now, they are trying to get the Google, they're trying to get the Apple. Monopoly is no good.
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions? So it sounds like, Chris, we got some thinking to do, but go ahead. Hello.
Okay, it's not working.
Oh.
Oh, there we go. I'd like to take this offline, but I would like my board members to explain to me the epoxy process. In other words, I view it as you have a tire, okay? The tire has a 10-year lifespan. When you get to that 10 years, you decide to put an inner tube into it, okay? That rubber on the outside, that tire is still 10 years old. So how can you say that tire now has another 10 or 15-year lifespan? That is what I don't understand. And so
And I think that Renzo was trying to say the same thing.
and so I would like us to really focus on the options of what we're doing here, so we make sure we're spending wisely.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we're all, good presentation. Thank you for giving us this history. Is what we're doing, in your mind, the best thing that we could be doing as a board?
If you're asking for my personal opinion, yes, it
Ask
is.
for your expert opinion
Sure.
as a professional?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. It's saving you money from traditional replacement, and it's putting something in place that is just as good, if not a little bit better by 15 years than what was previously there, or what you could be putting in. But it's also reducing the impact to the residents.
Okay.
The traditional replacements are a big impact.
Okay.
I just want to comment on that. So you suggesting that epoxy line pipes have less clogging? Is that what you're saying, or am I misunderstanding your comment?
Yes.
There is a less potential for the epoxy line to be clogged up by towels and, with all the junk that they put in there. Is that possible?
There is a less of a possibility of it happening. However, if I'm being honest, we have seen it before to where somebody puts a large amount at one time, it gets clogged.
Now I understand.
There's no way around
Yeah,
that.
Thanks.
they're slick. It looks like, based on pictures, they look fairly slick, so things would
And you're-
slide through potentially easier than.
Correct. And you're,
Yeah, just pour all the way down the drain. Is that what you're suggesting?
and you're removing the possibility of that scale buildup because nothing's sticking to the inside of this pipe.
Okay. All right. Okay. So,
again, we're just struggling with, it's extremely expensive, it's extremely slow. You know, it's one of the many things that we have to spend money on out of our reserves. We've talked about a few others today. So we're just kind of trying to figure out if there's some other options.
I think in no way any of the comments are going to infringe your personal and professional opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, we just wanted, yeah, I mean, part of it.
Ask a question,
Right.
understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and didn't understand how we got here and, why we're doing it, and was the proper assessment and analysis done before, or did somebody just say, hey, I saw a seminar about epoxy lining, let's start doing that kind of thing.
And if I may give you a little bit of information here, I know that there have been questions as to the number of buildings that are getting done versus perhaps United has a larger number of buildings that get done per year. And that's just because they're not doing 3-story buildings because they don't have them. When you guys were not focused on 3-story buildings, you guys were absolutely getting 60 buildings done in a year.
How many buildings?
About 60 buildings.
60?
60.
60.
Because they're much smaller and faster.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good stuff. Any other comments, questions for anyone? We're now down to director's comments. Any final comments for you, Moon?
First of all, thank you for all the presentation and discussion, and we ask harder questions to the staff, and they answered very, diligently and sincere. Thank you. Second one is we have to make harder choices, and our residents are squeezed to pretty bad, and so we have to save some money somehow, but we cannot delay what we need to do. And so that's hard choice we have to make at some point. Thank you.
Agree. Thanks. Reza?
Yeah, I just want to thank Jose, Siobhan, Steve, and the staff. Really, thanks for putting us with us, asking questions. For us is to understand things better so we can, make a better judgment and better decision. And I really appreciate hanging in there and answering it. And I just want to say nothing personal. It's just all about money.
SK?
Just want to say thank you. Let's work together. Thank you.
Chris?
No questions.
Okay. David?
I just wanted to thank Stuart for hanging out with us all.
Right.
Comment on this one thing.
Okay.
So, Chris, the example that you gave about the tire, you got to think reverse on it. So I'm concerned. We really do want these linings done, and everything I've heard here has not changed my mind about it. But this example about you're taking the tire and you're relining the inside, that's exactly the opposite. We're relining the outside of that tire.
What?
So
No.
wait a minute. The point where the wear occurs on a tire is on the outside. The point where the wear occurs on a pipe is on the inside. We're relining the inside. So to use your tire as an example, if we were trying to fix tires, we would be relining the outside, which is what they do.
Okay.
I appreciate that, but I'm more confused
As are we all.
You can argue with that in short.
Okay.
I'll put on wrong pants for that argument.
Okay, it's been a long day. Thanks for everybody for hanging out with us. And with that, we are going to adjourn this meeting at 4:46. Thanks, everyone.